A millionaire decides to make a surprise visit to his brother's house, where his grandmother lives and has been strangely absent for months. Upon entering, he finds his grandmother kneeling on the floor, crying as she silently scrubs the floor. The millionaire is completely shocked to discover what has been happening in that house, and what he decides to do next is truly moving. The sleek Tesla glided silently through the tree-lined streets of Silicon Valley, its electric engine a testament to the very technology that had made Ethan Reeves a household name in sustainable innovation. At 35, Ethan had already achieved what most could only dream of: a thriving tech empire, a beautiful home, and most importantly, a precocious 7-year-old daughter who was the light of his life. Yet, as he navigated the familiar route to his brother's house, a nagging sense of unease gnawed at him. "Daddy, are we really going to surprise Great-Grandma?" Lily's excited voice piped up from the back seat, her brown curls bouncing as she clutched her favorite stuffed elephant. Ethan glanced at her through the rearview mirror, forcing a smile. "That's right, sweetie. It's been too long since we've seen her." Too long indeed. The last few months had been a whirlwind of board meetings, product launches, and late nights at the office. Ethan had thrown himself into his work, driven by an insatiable desire to push the boundaries of clean energy. But with every milestone achieved, every accolade earned, the void within him seemed to grow deeper. As they turned onto Maple Street, memories flooded back. This was where he had spent countless summers as a child, where his grandmother had taken him in after the tragic car accident that claimed his mother's life when he was just 12. The very thought of it made his chest tighten, a familiar ache that never truly went away. "Look, Daddy, that's where you said you used to climb trees." Lily's excitement was palpable as they passed the old oak that stood sentinel at the corner of his brother's property. Ethan chuckled, momentarily distracted from his worries. "That's right, Lil. Your Uncle Jack and I had quite a few adventures in that old tree." As they pulled into the driveway, Ethan's smile faded. Something felt off. The usually well-manicured lawn was overgrown, and the cheerful flower pots that his grandmother prided herself on were wilted and neglected. A sense of foreboding settled over him as he helped Lily out of the car. "Remember, sweetie, we're here to surprise Great-Grandma, so let's be extra quiet, okay?" Ethan whispered, balancing a bouquet of lilies, his grandmother's favorite, and a box containing her beloved lemon cake. Lily nodded solemnly, her big brown eyes wide with anticipation. Hand in hand, they approached the front door. Ethan's unease grew as he noticed it was slightly ajar, a sight so unlike his meticulous grandmother. "Hello?" he called out softly, pushing the door open. The house was unnaturally quiet, save for a faint sound coming from the kitchen. "Grandma? Jack? Anyone home?" The familiar scent of lemon and lavender that usually permeated the house was absent, replaced by a musty odor that spoke of neglect. Ethan's grip on Lily's hand tightened as they made their way through the living room. Family photos lined the walls, frozen moments of happier times. His eyes lingered on a picture of his mother, her radiant smile forever captured in time. As they neared the kitchen, the sound grew clearer, a soft rhythmic scrubbing punctuated by what sounded like sobs. Ethan's heart raced as he rounded the corner, unprepared for the sight that greeted him. There on her hands and knees was his grandmother. Her once vibrant silver hair hung limply around her face, and her frail form trembled with effort as she scrubbed furiously at a spot on the linoleum floor. Beside her, a tipped-over mug lay in a puddle of what looked like spilled tea. "Grandma!" Ethan exclaimed, rushing to her side. He set down the flowers and cake, kneeling beside her. "What happened? Are you all right?" His grandmother startled at his voice, looking up with red-rimmed eyes. For a moment, confusion clouded her features before recognition dawned. "Ethan! Oh, my dear boy, I didn't expect you." She attempted to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "It's nothing, just a little spill, I can handle it." Ethan gently took the sponge from her trembling hands. "Let me help you up, Grandma. You shouldn't be on the floor like this." As he helped her to her feet, he couldn't help but notice how frail she felt, how much weight she seemed to have lost since he last saw her. "Great-Grandma?" Lily's small voice quavered from the doorway, her eyes wide with concern. "Oh, Lily, my sweet girl." His grandmother's voice softened, a genuine smile finally gracing her features. "Come here and give your old great-grandmother a hug." As Lily rushed into her arms, Ethan took a moment to survey the kitchen. Dishes were piled in the sink, the trash overflowed, and a layer of dust covered the usually spotless countertops. This wasn't just a momentary lapse in housekeeping. Something was seriously wrong. "Grandma," Ethan began cautiously, "where's Jack? I thought he was staying here to help you out." His grandmother's smile faltered. "Oh, your brother. He's been so busy with work lately. I didn't want to bother him with trivial things. You know how it is, running a business takes so much time and energy." Ethan felt a surge of guilt. He knew all too well the demands of running a company, but he had always assumed his brother was picking up the slack, taking care of their grandmother as they had agreed. Clearly that wasn't the case. "Why don't we sit down?" Ethan suggested, guiding his grandmother to the kitchen table. "Lily, sweetheart, why don't you go set up your coloring books in the living room? Great-grandma and I need to talk for a bit." Once Lily was out of earshot, Ethan turned to his grandmother, taking her hands in his. "Grandma, please tell me what's really going on. This isn't like you at all. Where has Jack been?" His grandmother's eyes welled up with tears. "Oh, Ethan, I didn't want to be a burden. Your brother, he tries, but he has his own life, his own struggles. I thought I could manage on my own. But lately," she trailed off, her gaze dropping to their clasped hands. "Lately what, Grandma?" Ethan pressed gently, a knot forming in his stomach. "I've been so forgetful," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I lose track of time, I forget to eat, and sometimes I don't even remember how I got somewhere. I'm scared, Ethan. I'm scared of what's happening to me." Ethan felt as if the ground had dropped out from beneath him. This vibrant, strong woman who had raised him, who had been his rock through the darkest period of his life, was now vulnerable and afraid, and he had been too caught up in his own world to notice. "Why didn't you call me?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. "I would have come right away." His grandmother managed a weak smile. "You have so much on your plate already, my dear." "Your company, little Lily. I didn't want to add to your burdens. You've already lost so much." Ethan shook his head, fighting back tears. "You could never be a burden, Grandma, never. You're the reason I am who I am today. You taught me about resilience, about love, about picking myself up when life knocks me down. Now it's my turn to be there for you." As the weight of the situation settled over him, Ethan made a decision. He couldn't leave his grandmother in this state, alone and struggling, but bringing her into his fast-paced, high-pressure world wouldn't be easy either. He had a company to run, a daughter to raise, and now a grandmother who needed more care than he had realized. The sound of Lily's laughter drifted in from the living room, a reminder of the joy and innocence that still existed in their world. Ethan squeezed his grandmother's hands, determination setting in. "We're going to figure this out together, Grandma. I promise you, you're not alone in this. Whatever's happening, we'll face it as a family." As his grandmother's tears finally spilled over, Ethan pulled her into a tight embrace. In that moment, surrounded by the remnants of neglect and the echoes of happier times, he silently vowed to do whatever it took to protect and care for the woman who had given him everything. Little did he know, this decision would set in motion a chain of events that would challenge everything he thought he knew about family, success, and the true meaning of wealth. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the living room as Ethan helped his grandmother settle onto the worn leather couch. Lily, sensing the gravity of the situation, had curled up in a nearby armchair with her coloring books, occasionally glancing up at her great-grandmother with worried eyes. "I'm going to make us some tea," Ethan announced, needing a moment to collect his thoughts. As he busied himself in the kitchen, the familiar routine of filling the kettle and selecting tea bags provided a semblance of normalcy amidst the turmoil of emotions swirling within him. His eyes fell on a faded photograph stuck to the refrigerator with a magnet, himself as a gangly 12-year-old, flanked by his grandmother and older brother Jack. It was taken just weeks after the accident that claimed his mother's life. The pain in his younger self's eyes was evident, but there was also a glimmer of resilience, nurtured by the unwavering love and support of the woman now sitting frail and vulnerable in the next room. As the kettle whistled, Ethan was struck by a vivid memory. It was his first night in this very house after the funeral. He had woken up screaming from a nightmare, the image of screeching tires and shattered glass still fresh in his mind. His grandmother had rushed in, cradling him as he sobbed. "Shh, my brave boy," she had whispered, her voice a soothing balm to his raw grief. "I know it hurts, but remember, The love we carry for those we've lost is stronger than any pain. It's what gives us the strength to go on. Those words had become his mantra over the years, carrying him through the darkest times and fueling his drive to make a difference in the world. Now, as he carefully arranged cookies on a plate, his grandmother's favorite lemon shortbread, Ethan realized it was time to embody that strength she had instilled in him. Returning to the living room with the tea tray, Ethan found his grandmother gazing at Lily with a wistful smile. "She reminds me so much of your mother," she said softly as Ethan set down the tray. That same curiosity, that spark in her eyes. Ethan felt a familiar pang in his chest. "I wish Mom could have met her," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. His grandmother reached out, patting his hand. "Oh, my dear, she sees her. I truly believe that. Your mother's love is still with us, guiding us even now." As they sipped their tea, a comfortable silence fell over the room. Ethan's mind raced, trying to formulate a plan. He couldn't leave his grandmother here alone, that much was clear. But the logistics of moving her into his home in Silicon Valley, with its frenetic pace and the constant demands of his company, seemed daunting. "Grandma," he began cautiously, I think it might be best if you came to stay with Lily and me for a while. At least until we can figure out what's going on and get you the help you need." His grandmother's eyes widened, a mix of emotions playing across her face. "Oh, Ethan, I couldn't possibly impose like that. Your life is so busy and I'd just be in the way." Ethan shook his head firmly. "You could never be in the way. You're family. And family takes care of each other, right? That's what you always taught us." A soft sob from the armchair interrupted their conversation. They turned to see Lily, her coloring book forgotten, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Lily, sweetheart, what's wrong?" Ethan asked, moving to kneel beside her. "I don't want great-grandma to be sick," she hiccuped, her small frame shaking with emotion. "Can't we make her better, Daddy? Like how you fix broken things in your lab?" Ethan's heart clenched at his daughter's innocent plea. He gathered her into his arms, feeling her tears soak into his shirt. "Oh, Lil," he murmured, stroking her hair. "Sometimes people get sick in ways that aren't as simple to fix as broken machines. But that doesn't mean we can't help. In fact, having great-grandma come stay with us might be the best medicine of all." Lily looked up, her eyes shining with hope. "Really? Great-grandma can come live with us?" "If she wants to," Ethan replied, glancing at his grandmother. "What do you say, Grandma? Will you let us take care of you for a change?" His grandmother's resistance seemed to crumble in the face of Lily's earnest plea. "Well," she said, a tremulous smile forming on her lips, "I suppose I could visit for a little while, just until things get sorted out." As Lily's face lit up with joy, Ethan felt a wave of relief wash over him. It wouldn't be easy, but they would face whatever challenges lay ahead together, as a family. The rest of the afternoon passed in a flurry of activity. Ethan called his assistant, rearranging meetings and clearing his schedule for the next few days. He then set about packing a suitcase for his grandmother, with Lily eagerly helping by suggesting which of her great-grandmother's colorful scarves to bring. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow through the windows, Ethan realized there was one more issue to address. His brother, Jack. He hadn't shown up all afternoon, and the state of the house suggested he hadn't been around much lately either. "Grandma," Ethan asked as he zipped up the suitcase, "when was the last time you saw Jack?" His grandmother's brow furrowed in concentration. "Oh, let's see. I believe he stopped by last weekend, or was it the weekend before?" "I'm sorry, dear, I can't quite remember." Ethan felt a surge of anger towards his brother. How could Jack have let things deteriorate to this point? But he pushed the feeling aside, knowing that confrontation would have to wait. Right now, his grandmother's well-being was the priority. As they prepared to leave, Ethan's grandmother stood in the center of the living room, her eyes roaming over the familiar surroundings. Memories seemed to dance in her gaze, of children's laughter, of family dinners, of quiet evenings spent reading by the fireplace. For a moment, Ethan saw not the frail woman she had become, but the pillar of strength who had held their family together through the darkest of times. "Are you sure about this, Ethan?" she asked, her voice quavering slightly. "Your life is so different now. I don't want to be a burden." Ethan wrapped an arm around her shoulders, drawing her close. "Grandma, do you remember what you told me the night of Mom's funeral? About how the love we carry gives us strength?" She nodded, her eyes misting over with tears. "Well, It's time for me to put that love into action. You've carried us for so long. Now it's our turn to carry you." The sleek modern lines of Ethan's Silicon Valley mansion stood in stark contrast to the quaint, lived-in warmth of his grandmother's home. As they pulled into the circular driveway, Ethan couldn't help but notice his grandmother's wide-eyed expression, a mix of awe and apprehension etched across her weathered features. "This is where you live, dear?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's quite something." Ethan felt a twinge of self-consciousness. He'd always been proud of his home, a testament to his hard work and success. But now, seeing it through his grandmother's eyes, he wondered if perhaps it was a bit much. "It's just a house, Grandma," he said, trying to sound nonchalant. "What matters is that we're together." As they helped her out of the car, Lily bouncing excitedly beside them, the front door opened to reveal Maria, Ethan's housekeeper, and Lily's part-time nanny. Her warm, round face creased with concern as she took in the sight of Ethan's frail grandmother. "Mr. Reeves, is everything all right?" she asked, moving to help with the bags. "Everything's fine, Maria," Ethan replied, though his tone betrayed his worry. "My grandmother will be staying with us for a while. Could you please prepare the guest room on the ground floor?" As Maria hurried off to make the arrangements, Ethan guided his grandmother into the spacious living room. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the lush gardens and the hills beyond, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun. "Oh my," his grandmother breathed, taking it all in. "It's beautiful, Ethan, but it must be so much work to maintain." Ethan chuckled softly. "That's what I pay people for, Grandma. You taught me the value of hard work, remember? This is just the result of putting those lessons into practice." His grandmother's eyes misted over as she patted his cheek. "You've done so well for yourself, my boy. Your mother would be so proud." The mention of his mother sent a familiar pang through Ethan's heart. Even after all these years, the loss still felt raw at times. He was about to respond when Lily's excited voice broke the moment. "Great-grandma, come see my room. I have a whole wall that lights up with stars." As Lily led her great-grandmother on a tour of the house, chattering away about her favorite toys and the treehouse in the backyard, Ethan retreated to his home office. He needed a moment to gather his thoughts and figure out their next steps. Sinking into his ergonomic chair, he pulled up his contacts and dialed Dr. Sarah Chen, a renowned neurologist he'd worked with on a medical technology project. As the phone rang, he found himself tapping his fingers nervously on the desk. "Dr. Chen speaking," came the crisp, professional voice on the other end. "Sarah, it's Ethan Reeves. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." "Ethan, it's been a while. What can I do for you?" Ethan took a deep breath. "It's my grandmother. She's been forgetting things, losing track of time. I found her today in a state I've never seen before. I'm worried it might be Alzheimer's." Dr. Chen finished for him, her tone softening. "I'm so sorry, Ethan. How long has this been going on?" "I'm not sure," Ethan admitted, shame coloring his voice. "I've been so caught up in work I didn't realize. God, I should have noticed sooner." "Don't blame yourself, Ethan. These things can be subtle at first. The important thing is that you're taking action now. Bring her in tomorrow morning. We'll run some tests and see what we're dealing with." After setting up the appointment, Ethan sat back, his mind racing. He'd faced countless challenges in his business career, navigated treacherous waters in the cutthroat world of tech startups. But this felt different. This was personal, and the stakes were higher than any business deal. A soft knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. He looked up to see his grandmother standing there, a hesitant smile on her face. "Am I interrupting?" she asked. "Never," Ethan replied, standing to guide her to a comfortable chair. "How are you settling in?" His grandmother chuckled softly. "Oh, it's all a bit overwhelming, to be honest. Lily's been showing me all the smart things in the house. Lights that come on when you clap, windows that tint themselves. It's like something out of a science fiction novel." Ethan couldn't help but smile. "Yeah, I might have gone a bit overboard with the home automation. We can simplify things for you, make it more comfortable." "Oh, don't you worry about me," she said, waving a hand dismissively. "I may be old, but I can still learn new tricks. Now, tell me what's really on your mind. I can see those worry lines forming, just like when you were a boy trying to hide a bad report card." Ethan sighed, marveling at how well she could still read him. "I've set up a doctor's appointment for you tomorrow. A neurologist. I think I think we need to get to the bottom of what's been going on with your memory." He expected resistance, perhaps even denial, but his grandmother simply nodded, a look of resignation crossing her face. "I suppose it's time," she said quietly. "I've known for a while that something wasn't right. I just didn't want to worry you or Jack. You boys have your own lives, your own troubles." Ethan leaned forward, taking her hands in his. "Grandma, you've always been there for us, through everything. Now it's our turn to be there for you. Whatever this is, whatever we find out tomorrow, we'll face it together." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the distant sound of Lily's laughter drifting in from the garden. As the last rays of sunlight painted the room in warm hues, Ethan felt a mix of emotions swirling within him: fear for what the future might hold, determination to care for the woman who had given him so much, and a gnawing sense of guilt over how long he'd been absent from her life. "You know," his grandmother said softly, her gaze drifting to the family photos Ethan kept on his desk, "I've been thinking a lot about your mother lately, about the day we lost her." Ethan tensed, as he always did when the subject of his mother's passing came up. "Grandma, you don't have to—" She held up a hand, silencing him gently. "No, I think I need to say this. That day when we got the news, I thought my world had ended. I'd already lost your grandfather, and now my daughter. I didn't think I had the strength to go on." Ethan listened, his heart aching at the pain in her voice. "But then I looked at you and Jack, two boys who had just lost their mother, and I knew I had to be strong for you. Your pain gave me purpose, gave me the strength to keep going. And now seeing the man you've become, the father you are to Lily, I know that every struggle was worth it." Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes. "Grandma, A crash from the kitchen interrupted him, followed by Lily's panicked cry. "Daddy, great-grandma! Come quick!" Ethan and his grandmother exchanged a worried glance before hurrying towards the sound. As they entered the kitchen, they found Lily standing amid a sea of broken glass and spilled milk, her eyes wide with fear. "I'm sorry," she whimpered. "I was trying to get milk for cookies, but the jug was so heavy." Ethan moved to comfort his daughter, but his grandmother was quicker. With a grace that belied her earlier frailty, she navigated the minefield of glass shards and scooped Lily into her arms. There, my sweet girl," she cooed, stroking Lily's hair. "Accidents happen. The important thing is that you're not hurt." As Ethan watched his grandmother comfort Lily, he was struck by the resilience of the human spirit. Here was a woman facing an uncertain future, grappling with the possibility of losing her memories, yet still able to summon the strength to be a pillar of support for her great-granddaughter. In that moment, surrounded by the mess of spilled milk and broken glass, Ethan made a silent vow. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever sacrifices he had to make, he would ensure that his grandmother's twilight years were filled with the same love, comfort, and security she had always provided for him. As he began to clean up the mess, his mind turned to the doctor's appointment looming on the horizon. Tomorrow would bring answers, but it would also likely bring new questions and challenges. But for now, in this moment, watching his grandmother and daughter together, Ethan felt a sense of peace wash over him. They were family, and together, they could weather any storm. The morning sun had barely peeked over the horizon when Ethan's phone buzzed insistently on his nightstand. Groggily, he reached for it, his eyes widening as he saw the name on the screen. "Jack." "Hello?" he answered, his voice still rough with sleep. "Ethan, where the hell is Grandma?" Jack's voice crackled through the speaker, a mix of anger and panic evident in his tone. Ethan sat up, fully awake now. "She's here with me. I brought her to my place yesterday." "Jack, why didn't you tell me how bad things had gotten?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Jack spoke again, his voice was quieter, laced with defeat. I thought I could handle it. I didn't want to bother you with your busy life and all." "Bother me? Jack, she's our grandmother. She raised us. This isn't a bother. It's our responsibility." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, frustration building. "Look, I've set up a doctor's appointment for her this morning. A neurologist. I think it might be Alzheimer's." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Jack spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was afraid of that. I've noticed things, forgetting conversations we just had, getting confused about what day it is. I just didn't want to believe it." Ethan felt his anger dissipating, replaced by a deep sadness for his brother. I know, Jack. I should have been around more. I should have noticed sooner. But we can't change the past. What matters now is how we move forward. You're right, Jack agreed. Listen, I can be there in a few hours. I want to be there for the appointment. As Ethan ended the call, promising to text Jack the details of the appointment, he heard a soft knock at his bedroom door. Come in, he called out. The door creaked open, revealing Lily in her favorite unicorn pajamas, her curls a wild mess around her face. Daddy, she said hesitantly. Is great-grandma okay? I heard you talking. Ethan's heart melted at the concern in his daughter's eyes. He patted the bed beside him, and Lily scrambled up, snuggling into his side. Great-grandma is fine, sweetheart. We're just going to take her to see a special doctor today to make sure she stays healthy. Lily nodded solemnly. Can I come too? I want to hold her hand if she gets scared. Ethan kissed the top of her head, marveling at his daughter's compassion. That's very sweet of you, Lil, but I think it's best if you stay here with Maria today. How about you work on making a special welcome card for great-grandma? I'm sure she'd love that. As Lily's face lit up at the idea, Ethan couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. Despite the challenges of raising her as a single father, moments like these reassured him that he must be doing something right. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Ethan helped his grandmother get ready, noticing how she struggled with buttons and seemed unsure about which clothes to choose. Each moment of confusion sent a pang through his heart, but he maintained a calm, reassuring demeanor. As they sat at the kitchen island, picking at a breakfast that neither of them had much appetite for, Ethan's grandmother reached out, placing her hand over his. Ethan, my dear, she said, her voice soft but steady. Whatever we find out today, I want you to know how proud I am of you, of the man you've become, the father you are to Lily. Ethan felt a lump forming in his throat. Grandma, She shook her head, cutting him off gently. Let me finish. I know I haven't been myself lately. There are moments when the world seems to slip away from me, when familiar things become strange and frightening, but through it all, one thing remains clear. The love I have for you and Jack and little Lily. That's something no illness can take away. Before Ethan could respond, the doorbell rang. Jack had arrived. As Ethan went to let his brother in, he took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever the day might bring. The reunion between Jack and their grandmother was emotional, filled with tight hugs and whispered apologies. As they drove to the hospital, an uneasy silence fell over the car, each of them lost in their own thoughts and fears. Dr. Chen's office was a stark, clinical space, a sharp contrast to the warmth of Ethan's home. As they sat waiting for the results of the tests, Ethan found himself studying his brother. Jack looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes and a slump to his shoulders that spoke of a weight he'd been carrying for far too long. I'm sorry, Ethan said quietly, causing Jack to look up in surprise. I should have been around more. I should have noticed something was wrong. Jack shook his head. No, I'm the one who should be sorry. I was here, I saw the signs, and I didn't want to face it. It was easier to pretend everything was fine. Before either of them could say more, Dr. Chen entered the room, her face a mask of professional composure. Mrs. Reeves, Ethan, Jack, she greeted them. I have the results of our tests. What followed was a blur of medical terminology and gentle explanations. Early-stage Alzheimer's disease, cognitive decline, treatment options, lifestyle changes. Each word felt like a blow, reshaping the landscape of their lives. Through it all, their grandmother sat quietly, her hand gripping Ethan's tightly. It wasn't until Dr. Chen finished speaking that she finally broke her silence. Well, she said, her voice remarkably steady, I suppose this explains why I've been beating myself at chess lately. The brothers exchanged shocked glances, then burst into laughter, the tension of the moment briefly broken by their grandmother's unexpected humor. As they left the hospital, armed with pamphlets, prescriptions, and a follow-up appointment, Ethan felt a strange mix of emotions. There was fear, certainly, for what the future might hold, but there was also a sense of relief at finally having answers and a determination to face whatever challenges lay ahead. So, Jack said as they reached the car, what's the plan now? Ethan looked at his grandmother, who was gazing out at the bustling hospital parking lot with a faraway look in her eyes. In that moment, he made a decision that would change all their lives. She's coming to live with me and Lily, he said firmly, We'll convert the guest house into a space for her. It'll be close enough for us to keep an eye on her, but she'll still have her independence." Jack nodded slowly. "That makes sense, but Ethan, what about your work? Running a tech empire isn't exactly conducive to being a full-time caregiver." Ethan squared his shoulders, feeling the weight of his decision, but knowing in his heart it was the right one. The sleek glass and steel building that housed Ethan's company, Ecotech Innovations, loomed before him as he pulled into his reserved parking spot. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of trepidation as he approached the entrance. The events of the past few days had shifted his perspective dramatically, and he knew the conversation he was about to have would send ripples through the company he'd built from the ground up. As he strode through the open-plan office, nodding acknowledgements to his employees, Ethan could feel the energy of innovation and ambition that had always driven him. But now it felt somehow distant, as if he were viewing it through a lens that had suddenly been adjusted. "Good morning, Mr. Reeves." His assistant, Sarah, greeted him as he approached his office. "The board members are already gathered in the conference room for the emergency meeting you called." Ethan took a deep breath, straightening his tie. "Thank you, Sarah. Could you bring in some coffee, please? I have a feeling we're going to need it." The faces around the conference table were a mix of curiosity and concern as Ethan entered. These were the people who had been with him from the start, who had believed in his vision of sustainable technology that could change the world. He owed them the truth. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Ethan began, his voice steady despite the churning in his stomach. "I've called this meeting because I need to inform you of some changes that will be happening, both in my personal life and consequently in the company." He went on to explain the situation with his grandmother, her diagnosis, and his decision to become her primary caregiver. As he spoke, he could see the expressions around the table shift from concern to surprise, and in some cases, to barely concealed alarm. "What does this mean for Ecotech?" asked Marcus, the head of R&D, voicing the question that was undoubtedly on everyone's mind. Ethan took a moment before responding, his gaze sweeping across the faces of his team. "It means that my role here will need to change. I won't be able to maintain the same level of day-to-day involvement. I'll be stepping back from my position as CEO, effective immediately." A collective gasp filled the room, followed by a flurry of whispered conversations. Ethan held up a hand, silencing them. "I know this comes as a shock and I understand your concerns, but I want to assure you that I'm not abandoning the company. I'll be taking on the role of chairman of the board, focusing on long-term strategy and vision. For the day-to-day operations, I'm recommending that we promote Jennifer to the position of CEO." All eyes turned to Jennifer, the current COO, whose face registered shock at the unexpected announcement. "Ethan, I don't know what to say," Jennifer stammered, her usual composure momentarily shaken. "You don't have to say anything right now," Ethan replied with a reassuring smile. "You've been instrumental in our success, Jen. You know this company inside and out, and there's no one I trust more to lead it into the future." The next hour was filled with questions, concerns, and intense discussion. Ethan did his best to address every issue raised, to assuage fears and paint a picture of a future where Ecotech could continue to thrive, even with his reduced involvement. As the meeting drew to a close, Ethan felt a mix of exhaustion and relief. He knew there would be challenges ahead, both for the company and for himself, but he also felt a sense of peace with his decision. After the board members filed out, Jennifer lingered behind. "Ethan," she said, her voice soft with concern, "are you sure about this? You've poured your heart and soul into this company. It's your legacy." Ethan smiled, feeling a warmth for his longtime colleague and friend. "Ecotech is important to me, Jen, it always will be. But legacy isn't just about the things we build or the money we make. It's about the lives we touch, the difference we make. Right now, my grandmother needs me, and in helping her, I think I might just rediscover some important truths I've lost sight of along the way." Jennifer nodded, understanding dawning in her eyes. "We'll make you proud, Ethan. I promise." As Ethan left the office that day, carrying a box of personal items from his desk, he felt as if he were closing one chapter of his life and opening another. The weight of responsibility he'd carried for so long seemed to shift, not disappearing entirely, but changing form. Driving home, he found his thoughts drifting to his grandmother, to Lily, to the family dinners and quiet evenings he'd missed out on in his relentless pursuit of success. He realized with a start that he was looking forward to the simple act of being home for dinner, of helping Lily with her homework, of sitting with his grandmother and listening to her stories. As he pulled into his driveway, he saw Lily and his grandmother in the front garden. They were planting flowers, Lily's small hands covered in dirt as she carefully placed a seedling in the ground under her great-grandmother's watchful eye. The scene brought a lump to Ethan's throat. He got out of the car, leaving the box of office belongings on the passenger seat. It could wait. Right now, there were more important things to attend to. "Daddy!" Lily cried, spotting him. She ran towards him, her arms outstretched, not caring about the dirt she was spreading on his expensive suit as she hugged him tightly. "You're home early," his grandmother observed, a knowing look in her eyes. "How did it go?" Ethan scooped Lily up in one arm and offered the other to his grandmother, helping her to her feet. "It went exactly as it needed to," he replied. "Now, who's hungry? I think it's time I learned how to make your famous lasagna, Grandma." As they walked into the house together, the afternoon sun warm on their backs, Ethan felt a sense of rightness settle over him. The road ahead would not be easy, he knew. There would be challenges, setbacks, and difficult days. But looking at his daughter's smiling face and his grandmother's gentle eyes, he knew that he was exactly where he needed to be. The world of board meetings and product launches, of profit margins and market shares, had been his life for so long. But this was living. And he was determined to make the most of every moment. The gentle hum of medical equipment filled the air as Ethan sat in the waiting room of Dr. Chen's office, his grandmother beside him. It had been 2 weeks since the initial diagnosis, and they were back for a follow-up appointment. As they waited, Ethan couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed in such a short time. His decision to step back from ecotech had sent shockwaves through the tech industry. Speculation ran rampant in the business press, with theories ranging from a secret illness to a hostile takeover attempt. Ethan had chosen to remain silent on the matter, issuing only a brief statement about focusing on family matters. "Mr. Reeves?" A nurse's voice broke through his reverie. "Doctor, Chen will see you now." As they settled into Dr. Chen's office, Ethan noticed his grandmother's hand trembling slightly. He reached out, giving it a reassuring squeeze. Dr. Chen entered, her usual professional demeanor softened by a warm smile. "Mrs. Reeves, Ethan, it's good to see you both. How have things been since our last meeting?" Ethan's grandmother straightened in her chair. "Oh, you know, dear, I have my good days and my bad days. But having Ethan and little Lily around, it helps more than any medicine could." Dr. Chen nodded, her eyes twinkling. "I'm glad to hear that. Family support can indeed make a world of difference." She turned to Ethan. "And how are you coping with the changes, Ethan?" Ethan paused, considering the question. "It's been an adjustment," he admitted, "but also a revelation. I'm learning to slow down, to appreciate the small moments. It's not always easy, but it feels right." The rest of the appointment passed in a blur of medical jargon and treatment plans. As they were preparing to leave, Dr. Chen held Ethan back for a moment. "Ethan, I have a proposition for you," she said, her tone serious. "I'm part of a research team working on innovative treatments for Alzheimer's. We're exploring the intersection of neuroscience and technology, and frankly, we could use someone with your expertise." Ethan's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Dr. Chen, I'm flattered, but I'm not sure I'm qualified. My background is in sustainable energy, not medical technology." "Doctor." Chen shook her head, a determined glint in her eye. "Your grandmother's condition has given you a personal stake in this fight, Ethan, and your experience in developing cutting-edge technology could be invaluable. We need fresh perspectives, people who can think outside the box." As they left the hospital, Ethan's mind was whirling with possibilities. The idea of contributing to Alzheimer's research, of potentially making a difference not just for his grandmother, but for millions of others. It was tempting, to say the least. "You're awfully quiet, dear," his grandmother observed as they drove home. "Penny for your thoughts?" Ethan glanced at her, a small smile playing on his lips. "Just thinking about something Dr. Chen said. Grandma, how would you feel about me getting involved in some medical research? It might mean some time away from home, but it could potentially help a lot of people dealing with, well, with what you're going through." His grandmother was silent for a moment, her gaze fixed on the passing scenery. When she spoke, her voice was filled with a quiet strength that never failed to amaze Ethan. Ethan, my dear, you've already given up so much for me. Your career, your daily routine. I won't have you putting your life on hold entirely. She turned to him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. If this is something you feel called to do, then you must do it. Use that brilliant mind of yours to help others. It's what your mother would have wanted. Ethan felt a lump form in his throat at the mention of his mother. Are you sure, Grandma? I don't want you to feel like I'm abandoning you. She reached out, patting his hand on the steering wheel. Abandoning me? Nonsense, you'll still be here, just expanding your horizons a bit. And who knows? Maybe you'll discover something that could help old fogies like me keep our marbles a bit longer. Ethan couldn't help but chuckle at her self-deprecating humor. It was moments like these that reminded him of the strong, vibrant woman who had raised him, who still shone through despite the fog of Alzheimer's. As they pulled into the driveway, Ethan saw Lily waiting on the front porch, practically bouncing with excitement. Beside her stood Jack, a tentative smile on his face. "Uncle Jack!" Lily squealed as they got out of the car. She launched herself at him, and Jack caught her with a laugh, swinging her around. Ethan felt a surge of emotion at the sight. Since their grandmother's diagnosis, he and Jack had been working on rebuilding their relationship, trying to bridge the gap that years of misunderstanding and resentment had created. "Hey, little brother," Jack greeted as Ethan approached. "Thought I'd stop by, see if you needed any help." Ethan nodded, grateful for the gesture. "Thanks, Jack. Actually, there is something I wanted to talk to you about." As their grandmother settled in for her afternoon nap, Ethan and Jack sat on the back porch, watching Lily play in the yard. Ethan explained Dr. Chen's proposal, his own conflicted feelings, and their grandmother's encouragement. Jack listened intently, his expression thoughtful. When Ethan finished, he was quiet for a long moment before speaking. "You know, Ethan, when you took over caring for Grandma, I felt relieved, if I'm being honest. And then I felt guilty for feeling relieved." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "But seeing you these past couple of weeks, how you've stepped up, how you've changed, it's inspired me to do better too." Ethan felt a warmth spread through his chest at his brother's words. "Jack, Let me finish," Jack interrupted gently. "If this research opportunity is something you want to pursue, then do it. I'll step up more with Grandma and Lily. We're family, right? We're in this together." Ethan blinked back tears, overwhelmed by the support. "Thanks, Jack. That means a lot." As the brothers sat in companionable silence, watching Lily chase butterflies in the fading afternoon light, Ethan felt a sense of hope he hadn't experienced in a long time. The road ahead was still uncertain, filled with challenges he couldn't yet foresee. But he wasn't facing it alone. He had his grandmother's wisdom, Lily's boundless love, Jack's newfound support, and now potentially a chance to make a real difference in the fight against Alzheimer's. For the first time in weeks, Ethan felt truly excited about the future. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the backyard, Ethan made a silent promise to himself. He would embrace this new chapter of his life with the same passion and dedication he had given to his business. But this time, he would do it with his family by his side, balancing the pursuit of progress with the precious moments of everyday life. The journey ahead would be difficult, he knew. There would be setbacks, frustrations, and days when it all seemed too much. But looking at his daughter's joyful face, feeling the solid presence of his brother beside him, and thinking of his grandmother resting peacefully inside, Ethan knew one thing for certain. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. And in that unity there was strength, hope, and the promise of brighter days to come. The pristine laboratories of the Neuroscience Research Center buzzed with activity as Ethan followed Dr. Chen through a maze of corridors. The sterile environment, with its state-of-the-art equipment and focused researchers, was a far cry from the tech startup world he was used to. Yet there was a familiar energy in the air, the excitement of innovation, the thrill of pushing boundaries. "And this is where we'll be conducting our primary research," Dr. Chen announced, gesturing to a large open lab space filled with complex machinery and holographic displays. "We're combining advanced AI algorithms with neuroimaging techniques to map the progression of Alzheimer's in unprecedented detail." Ethan nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. "Have you considered integrating quantum computing? It could potentially speed up the data processing exponentially." Dr. Chen's eyes lit up. That's exactly the kind of out-of-the-box thinking we need, Ethan. We've discussed it, but the implementation has been challenging. As they delved deeper into the technical aspects of the research, Ethan felt a familiar spark igniting within him. It was the same feeling he'd had when he first started Ecotech, the exhilarating sense of being on the cusp of something truly groundbreaking. Hours flew by as Ethan immersed himself in the project, bouncing ideas off the team of neuroscientists and tech experts. It wasn't until his phone buzzed with a text from Lily that he realized how late it had gotten. "Daddy, when are you coming home? Great-grandma is teaching me to make cookies, but they're not as good as yours." A pang of guilt shot through Ethan. He'd promised Lily he'd be home for dinner. "I'm so sorry, Dr. Chen," he said, hurriedly gathering his things. "I lost track of time. I need to get home." Dr. Chen smiled understandingly. "Family first, Ethan. That's what this is all about, isn't it? Go on, we'll pick this up tomorrow." The drive home was a whirlwind of emotions for Ethan. Excitement about the research warred with guilt over missing time with Lily and his grandmother. As he pulled into the driveway, he saw Lily's face pressed against the living room window, her expression lighting up as she spotted his car. "Daddy's home," he heard her shout as he walked through the door. She launched herself into his arms and he scooped her up, inhaling the sweet scent of sugar and vanilla that clung to her hair. "I'm sorry I'm late, sweetheart," he murmured, hugging her tightly. "Did you have fun baking with Great-Grandma?" Lily nodded enthusiastically. "We made snickerdoodles, but Great-Grandma forgot where she put the cinnamon, so we had to look everywhere. It was like a treasure hunt." Ethan's heart clenched at this casual mention of his grandmother's forgetfulness. He set Lily down and made his way to the kitchen, where he found his grandmother sitting at the table, a slightly bewildered expression on her face. "Grandma, are you okay?" he asked gently, kneeling beside her. She turned to him, her eyes focusing as recognition dawned. "Ethan, dear. When did you get home? I was just about to start dinner." "It's okay, Grandma. I just got back. Lily told me you two were baking cookies." His grandmother's brow furrowed. "Cookies?" "Oh yes, of course. Snickerdoodles. Your mother's favorite." She smiled wistfully. "You know, she once ate an entire batch before they had even cooled. Said it was worth every burn on her tongue." Ethan chuckled even as he felt a lump form in his throat. These moments of clarity, when his grandmother's memories shone through so vividly, were becoming rarer. He cherished each one, knowing they were precious and fleeting. As they sat down to a slightly delayed dinner, Ethan filled them in on his day at the research center, simplifying the complex science for Lily's benefit. His daughter listened with rapt attention, her eyes wide with wonder. "So you're gonna make medicine that helps people remember things?" Lily asked. Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. Ethan smiled. "Well, it's not that simple, sweetheart. But that's the goal we're working towards, yes." His grandmother reached across the table, patting his hand. "It's wonderful work you're doing, Ethan. Your mother would be so proud." Later that night, after Lily was tucked in bed and his grandmother had retired to her room, Ethan found himself sitting on the back porch lost in thought. The cool night air carried the scent of jasmine from the garden, a fragrance his grandmother had always loved. He thought about the day's events, the exhilaration of the research, the guilt of coming home late, the bittersweet moments with his grandmother. It was a delicate balance, he realized, this new life he was trying to build. A balance between pursuing a cure and cherishing the present, between being a scientist and being a father and grandson. His phone buzzed, interrupting his reverie. It was a text from Jack. "Hey, little bro, how was the first day at the Nerd Lab? Grandma doing okay?" Ethan smiled, appreciating his brother's attempt at humor and concern. He typed back a quick reply, updating Jack on the day's events and their grandmother's condition. As he was about to head inside, a final text from Jack came through. "You're doing great, Ethan. Don't forget to take care of yourself, too. We're in this together, remember?" Those words stayed with Ethan as he went through his nightly routine, checking on Lily and his grandmother before finally crawling into bed. He was doing important work, both at the research center and at home. It wouldn't be easy, but then again, nothing truly worthwhile ever was. As he drifted off to sleep, Ethan's mind was already racing with new ideas for the research project. But mixed in with the scientific theories and technological concepts were images of Lily's smile, his grandmother's twinkling eyes, and the warmth of family surrounding him. In that moment, on the cusp of sleep, Ethan realized that he was exactly where he needed to be. Balancing on the edge of scientific breakthrough and family devotion, he was forging a path that honored both his brilliant mind and his loving heart. And in that balance, he found a sense of purpose stronger than any he had known before. The challenges ahead were daunting, but Ethan was ready to face them. With his family behind him and a renewed sense of purpose driving him forward, he felt equipped to take on whatever the future might hold. As sleep finally claimed him, a small smile played on his lips. Tomorrow was a new day, full of possibilities, and he couldn't wait to see what it would bring. The soft glow of the computer screen illuminated Ethan's face as he pored over the latest data from the Alzheimer's research project. It was well past midnight, but he couldn't bring himself to stop. Every line of code, every data point, felt like it could be the key to unlocking the mystery of the disease that was slowly stealing his grandmother's memories. A soft knock at his home office door startled him. He looked up to see his grandmother standing in the doorway, a familiar quilt wrapped around her shoulders. "Grandma, what are you doing up so late?" Ethan asked, immediately concerned. She shuffled into the room, her eyes taking in the chaos of papers and empty coffee mugs strewn across his desk. "I could ask you the same thing, dear. You work too hard, just like your mother used to." Ethan felt a pang in his chest at the mention of his mother. "I was just going over some research data. Did you need something? Are you feeling okay?" His grandmother smiled softly, lowering herself into a chair across from him. "Oh, I'm fine, just couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts rattling around in this old brain of mine." She paused, her gaze becoming distant. "I was thinking about your mother, actually, about the day she brought you home from the hospital." Ethan leaned forward, his work forgotten. His grandmother rarely spoke about his mother these days, and he treasured every memory she shared. "She was so nervous," his grandmother continued, a fond smile playing on her lips. "Kept checking to make sure you were breathing every few minutes. But oh, the look of love in her eyes when she held you. I'll never forget it." Tears pricked at Ethan's eyes. "I wish I could remember her like that," he said softly. His grandmother reached across the desk, taking his hand in hers. "You may not remember it, dear, but that love is still with you. It's in everything you do, in the way you care for Lily, in this work you're doing now." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of memories, both cherished and lost, hanging between them. "You know," his grandmother said suddenly, her voice taking on a mischievous tone, "your mother once told me she hoped you'd become a doctor, said you had healing hands, even as a baby. I suppose in a way, she got her wish." Ethan chuckled softly. "I'm not sure computer programming and neuroscience research quite count as having healing hands, Grandma." She waved dismissively. "Nonsense. You're working to heal minds, aren't you? That's even more impressive than healing bodies, if you ask me." As they continued to talk, Ethan found himself relaxing for the first time in days. The pressure of the research, the constant worry about his grandmother's condition, the challenges of balancing work and family, it all seemed to fade away in the warmth of their conversation. As the first light of dawn began to creep through the windows, Ethan finally shut down his computer and headed to bed. His mind was still buzzing with ideas and plans, but now they were a balanced mix of research goals and family moments. He paused at Lily's room, peeking in to see her sleeping peacefully, her stuffed elephant clutched tightly to her chest. The sight filled him with a renewed sense of purpose. He was doing this for her, for his grandmother, for all the families facing the heartbreak of Alzheimer's. As he finally crawled into bed, exhaustion overtaking him, Ethan felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in weeks. The path ahead was still challenging, the balance between work and family still delicate. But with the memories of his mother, the wisdom of his grandmother, and the love of his daughter guiding him, he felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new data to analyze, new moments to cherish with his family. But for now, Ethan allowed himself to rest, knowing that in the delicate balance between his past, present, and future, he was exactly where he needed to be. As sleep claimed him, Ethan's last conscious thought was a silent promise. To his mother, his grandmother, his daughter, and himself, he would find a way to make a difference in science and in life. And he would do it while cherishing every moment with the people he loved. It wouldn't be easy, but then again, the most important things in life rarely were. The autumn sun cast a golden glow over the Neuroscience Research Center, As Ethan hurried through the entrance, a spring in his step despite the early hour. The past few weeks had seen significant progress in their research, and today's meeting could potentially be a game changer. "Morning, Dr. Chen," Ethan greeted as he entered the conference room, finding his colleague already there, surrounded by holographic displays of brain scans and data charts. Dr. Chen looked up, her eyes bright with excitement. "Ethan, perfect timing. You need to see this." She manipulated the holographic display, zooming in on a particular section of a brain scan. "Our latest algorithm has identified a pattern in the synaptic degradation that we've never seen before. It could be the key to early detection." Ethan leaned in, his mind racing as he absorbed the implications of what he was seeing. "This is incredible. If we can refine this, create a diagnostic tool, we could potentially diagnose Alzheimer's years before symptoms appear," Dr. Chen finished, her voice filled with cautious optimism. The next few hours flew by in a flurry of discussions, calculations, and planning. The entire research team was energized by the breakthrough, the air buzzing with possibilities. It wasn't until Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from Jack that he realized how much time had passed. "Hey bro, you're still coming to Lily's school play, right? She's been practicing her lines non-stop." Ethan's heart sank as he glanced at the time. He had completely forgotten about Lily's play. "Dr. Chen, I'm sorry, but I have to go. My daughter's school play is today." Dr. Chen nodded understandingly. "Family first, Ethan. We can continue this tomorrow. Go be with your daughter." As Ethan rushed to his car, he felt the familiar pull of conflicting responsibilities. He was thrilled about the research breakthrough, but the thought of potentially disappointing Lily made his stomach churn. He made it to the school just as the play was about to begin, slipping into a seat next to Jack and his grandmother. Lily, dressed as a sunflower, beamed at him from the stage, and Ethan felt a wave of relief wash over him. He hadn't missed it after all. "Cutting it close, little brother," Jack whispered, a knowing smile on his face. Ethan nodded, still catching his breath. "Big breakthrough at the lab. Lost track of time." His grandmother patted his hand. "You're here now, dear, that's what matters." As Ethan watched Lily deliver her lines with enthusiasm, if not perfect accuracy, he felt a swell of pride and love. In that moment, all the complex algorithms and groundbreaking research faded into the background. This, his daughter's joy, his grandmother's warm presence, his brother's supportive smile, this was what truly mattered. After the play, as Lily regaled them with behind-the-scenes stories over ice cream, Ethan's phone buzzed again. It was an email from Dr. Chen, marked urgent. Excusing himself, he stepped outside to read it. The news hit him like a punch to the gut. One of their key investors was pulling out, citing concerns about the project's timeline and potential ROI. Without this funding, their research could be delayed by months, if not years. Ethan leaned against the wall, closing his eyes as he tried to process the information. They were so close to a breakthrough, and now this setback threatened to derail everything. "Ethan!" His grandmother's voice startled him. She had followed him outside, concern etched on her face. "What's wrong, dear?" He hesitated, not wanting to burden her with the news. But something in her steady gaze made him open up. As he explained the situation, his grandmother listened attentively, her expression thoughtful. "You know," she said when he finished, "this reminds me of something your grandfather used to say. Setbacks are just setups for comebacks." He faced plenty of challenges in his business, but he never let them defeat him. Ethan smiled weakly. "I'm not sure Grandpa ever had to deal with million-dollar research budgets and neurological breakthroughs, Grandma." She chuckled, patting his arm. "Maybe not, but the principle is the same. You've got a brilliant mind, Ethan, and a good heart. You'll find a way through this." As they rejoined the others, Ethan's mind was already racing with potential solutions. He could reach out to his contacts from Ecotech, explore alternative funding sources, maybe even consider dipping into his own savings. "Daddy, did you see when I forgot my line and made up a new one?" Lily's excited voice broke through his thoughts. "Mrs. Johnson said I showed great improvisational skills." Ethan forced himself to push the work concerns aside, focusing on his daughter's beaming face. "I did see that, sweetheart. You were wonderful." Later that night, after Lily was tucked in bed and his grandmother had retired to her room, Ethan found himself in his home office, poring over financial reports and grant applications. The clock ticked past midnight, then 1, then 2. A soft knock at the door made him look up. It was Jack, holding 2 steaming mugs of coffee. "Thought you could use this," Jack said, setting one mug in front of Ethan. "Want to talk about it?" Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's just, we're so close, Jack. This breakthrough could change everything. But without the funding—" Jack nodded, sipping his coffee thoughtfully. "You know, I might be able to help with that." Ethan looked at his brother in surprise. "What do you mean?" "I've been doing pretty well with my construction company lately," Jack explained. "I've got some capital I was thinking of investing. Why not invest it in something that really matters?" Ethan was stunned. "Jack, I don't know what to say. Are you sure?" Jack smiled, a hint of their old sibling rivalry in his eyes. "What, you think you're the only one who can make a difference in the world? Besides, someone's got to keep you humble, little brother." As the brothers stayed up late into the night, discussing potential plans and strategies, Ethan felt a renewed sense of hope. The setback was still significant, but with Jack's support and his grandmother's wisdom echoing in his mind, he felt ready to face the challenge head-on. The next morning, as Ethan prepared to head back to the research center, he paused in the kitchen. Lily was helping his grandmother make breakfast, their laughter filling the room. Jack was at the table, reviewing some papers while stealing bites of toast. This, Ethan realized, was his strength, his family supporting him, grounding him, reminding him of what truly mattered. With their love and support behind him, he could face any obstacle. As they continued to talk, their conversation shifting between professional collaboration and personal experiences, Ethan felt a sense of camaraderie he hadn't expected to find at the symposium. Dr. Martinez shared stories of her own grandfather's struggle with dementia and how it had shaped her career path. "You know, Doctor," Martinez said as their conversation drew to a close, "I'm heading a new research initiative at my university. We're always looking for bright minds and fresh perspectives. If you're ever interested in collaboration or even a change of scenery, I'd love to have you on board." Ethan was taken aback by the offer. "Thank you, Dr. Martinez. That's incredibly generous. I'll certainly give it some thought." As he left the conference center, Ethan's mind was whirling with new ideas and possibilities. The connection with Dr. Martinez had opened up new avenues of research he hadn't considered before. But it had also presented him with an unexpected dilemma. Back at his hotel room, Ethan found himself on a video call with Lily and his grandmother. Lily was excitedly showing off a new drawing she had made, while his grandmother watched with a soft smile. "And this is you, Daddy," Lily explained, pointing to a stick figure with wild hair. "You're in your lab, making medicine to help people remember things." Ethan felt his heart swell with love and pride. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. I love it." His grandmother leaned into the frame, her eyes twinkling. "You look tired, dear. Are you eating properly? Getting enough rest?" Ethan chuckled, marveling at how, even in the midst of her illness, his grandmother's instinct to care for him remained strong. "I'm fine, Grandma. Just been a busy few days at the conference. How are you feeling?" "Oh, I have my good days and my bad days," she replied with a wry smile. "But today's been a good one. Lily's been reading to me from her school books. Did you know they're teaching algebra in elementary school now? In my day, we were lucky if we got past long division." As the call continued, filled with laughter and mundane family updates, Ethan felt the stress of the conference melt away. This connection with his family, this love that transcended distance and illness, this was what truly mattered. Later that night, as Ethan lay in his hotel bed, he found himself at a crossroads. Dr. Martinez's offer was tempting. It presented an opportunity to work with one of the leading minds in the field, to potentially accelerate his research. But it would mean moving, uprooting his family, taking his grandmother away from the home she knew and loved. As he wrestled with the decision, Ethan's thoughts drifted to something his mother used to say. Life's biggest choices are rarely between good and bad. They're between good and better. With that in mind, Ethan made a decision. He would talk to Dr. Martinez about a collaboration, one that wouldn't require him to move, but would allow them to combine their research efforts. It would mean more work, more late nights, more juggling of responsibilities, but it also meant staying close to his family, continuing to be there for his grandmother and Lily, while still pushing forward with his research. As he drifted off to sleep, Ethan felt a sense of peace settle over him. Tomorrow he would reach out to Dr. Martinez with his proposal. He would call Jack and discuss hiring a live-in nurse to help with their grandmother's care. and he would start making plans for a family outing when he got back home, perhaps a picnic in the park or a day trip to the beach. The path ahead was still challenging, filled with uncertainties and obstacles, but Ethan no longer felt overwhelmed by it. Instead, he felt grateful for the unexpected connections, both personal and professional, that were helping him navigate this journey. In the quiet of the hotel room, thousands of miles from home yet feeling closer to his family than ever, Ethan realized that every step of this difficult path was shaping him, teaching him, making him stronger. And with each step, he was not just working towards a cure for Alzheimer's, he was learning the true meaning of love, family, and resilience. The soft glow of the computer screen illuminated Ethan's face as he pored over the latest data from his collaboration with Dr. Martinez. It was well past midnight, but the excitement of their recent breakthrough kept him wide awake. Their combined research had yielded promising results in identifying early markers of Alzheimer's, potentially opening the door for earlier interventions. A gentle knock on his home office door broke his concentration. He looked up to see his grandmother standing in the doorway, a confused expression on her face. "Grandma?" Ethan said, immediately concerned. "What are you doing up so late?" She blinked, her gaze unfocused. I'm not sure. I thought I heard your mother's voice. Is she here?" Ethan felt a familiar pang in his chest. These episodes were becoming more frequent, especially at night. He stood up, gently guiding his grandmother to a chair. "No, Grandma, Mum's not here, remember? It's just you, me, Lily, and Uncle Jack living here now." Recognition flickered in her eyes, followed quickly by embarrassment. "Oh, Ethan, I'm sorry. I'm getting all mixed up again, aren't I?" "It's okay, Grandma," Ethan reassured her, kneeling beside her chair. "How about I make us some tea and we can look at Lily's memory board together?" As they sat in the dimly lit kitchen, sipping chamomile tea and going through the photos on the board Lily had made, Ethan couldn't help but marvel at the resilience of the human spirit. Even as the disease chipped away at her memories, his grandmother's essence, her kindness, her humor, her love for her family, remained intact. "You know," his grandmother said, her finger tracing a photo of Ethan's mother, "she would be so proud of you. The work you're doing, the father you've become to Lily, you're everything she hoped you'd be." Ethan felt tears prick at his eyes. "I hope so, Grandma. I miss her every day." His grandmother patted his hand. "She's still with us, dear. In you, in Lily, in the love we share. That's something no disease can take away." As Ethan helped his grandmother back to bed, his mind was whirling with thoughts of his research, his family, and the delicate balance he was trying to maintain between them. The next morning, as Ethan prepared for a video call with Dr. Martinez, he found Lily in the kitchen, carefully packing a lunchbox. "What's all this, sweetheart?" he asked, ruffling her hair affectionately. Lily beamed up at him. "I'm making lunch for great-grandma. Uncle Jack said we could have a picnic in the backyard today." Ethan felt a rush of gratitude for his brother's thoughtfulness. Jack had been stepping up more and more, finding creative ways to engage their grandmother and give Ethan the time he needed for his research. As Ethan settled in for his call with Dr. Martinez, he could hear the sounds of laughter drifting in from the backyard. The juxtaposition of his cutting-edge research discussion with the simple joy of a family picnic struck him profoundly. "Ethan, are you still with me?" Dr. Martinez's voice brought him back to the present. "Yeah, sorry," Ethan apologized. "Just got distracted for a moment. You were saying about the protein markers." Dr. Martinez smiled understandingly. "Family time?" "Don't apologize, Ethan. It's what gives our work meaning." As they delved into the intricacies of their latest findings, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. Every data point, every potential breakthrough was a step closer to helping families like his own. The call was interrupted by a commotion from the backyard. Ethan excused himself, rushing to see what was happening. He found Jack supporting their grandmother, who looked pale and disoriented. "She just suddenly got confused," Jack explained, worry etched on his face. "Started talking about needing to pick up Mom from school." Ethan's heart sank. These episodes were becoming more severe, more frequent. As he helped Jack settle their grandmother on the porch swing, Lily hovering nearby with wide, concerned eyes, Ethan knew they were reaching a turning point. That evening, after Lily was in bed and their grandmother was resting, Ethan and Jack sat on the back porch, the weight of unspoken decisions hanging between them. "We need to talk about full-time care," Jack said quietly, breaking the silence. Ethan nodded, the words he'd been avoiding for weeks finally spoken aloud. I know, I've been researching some options. There's a facility not far from here that specializes in Alzheimer's care. They have an excellent reputation. The brothers sat in silence for a moment, the gravity of the decision settling over them. It felt like the end of an era, a final admission that things would never go back to the way they were. She'll hate it, Jack said, his voice rough with emotion. Leaving her home, her family? Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. I know, but we're out of our depth, Jack. She needs more care than we can provide, especially with her nighttime wandering getting worse. As they discussed the logistics, finances, visiting schedules, how to break the news to their grandmother and Lily, Ethan felt a complex mix of emotions. Guilt at the thought of moving his grandmother out of her home, relief at the prospect of professional care, and a deep, aching sadness for the inevitable progression of the disease. Later that night, unable to sleep, Ethan found himself in his grandmother's room. She was awake, sitting up in bed, looking through an old photo album. Ethan, dear, she said as he entered, patting the bed beside her. Come look at these old pictures with me. As they flipped through the pages, his grandmother's memories seemed to flow more freely than they had in weeks. She told stories of Ethan's mother as a child, of family vacations long past, of the day Ethan was born. Grandma, Ethan said softly, gathering his courage, Jack and I have been talking. We think it might be time to consider moving you somewhere where you can get more specialized care. His grandmother was quiet for a long moment, her hand resting on a photo of the whole family at Ethan's college graduation. When she spoke, her voice was calm, resigned. I know, dear. I've known for a while that this day was coming. Ethan felt tears welling up in his eyes. I'm so sorry, Grandma. I wish... She cut him off gently, taking his hand in hers. No apologies, Ethan. You and Jack have done more than I could have ever asked for. But this disease, it's a journey I have to take. And part of that journey is knowing when to accept help. As they sat together in the quiet of the night, looking through old photos and sharing memories, Ethan felt a profound sense of love and gratitude wash over him. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with changes and challenges, but the love that bound their family together, a love that had weathered loss, illness, and the passage of time, would see them through. In that moment, with his grandmother's hand in his and a lifetime of memories spread out before them, Ethan made a silent vow. He would continue his research with renewed vigor, fighting not just for a cure, but for a future where families could face Alzheimer's with hope rather than despair. And he would cherish every moment, every memory, every fleeting spark of recognition, knowing that in the face of this relentless disease, love was the most powerful medicine of all. The warm autumn sun filtered through the windows of Serene Meadows, the Alzheimer's care facility that would now be home to Ethan's grandmother. The family stood in the newly furnished room, an awkward silence hanging in the air as they took in the unfamiliar surroundings. Lily clutched her great-grandmother's hand, her young face a mixture of confusion and concern. Great-grandma, why can't you come home with us? I promise I'll help take care of you. Ethan's heart clenched at his daughter's words. He knelt down beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. Remember what we talked about, sweetheart. This is a special place where great-grandma can get the help she needs. We'll visit her all the time, I promise. His grandmother, sitting in the plush armchair by the window, smiled softly at Lily. Don't you worry about me, my dear. This is just a new adventure. And look, she gestured to the walls where they had hung family photos and Lily's artwork. I have all of you right here with me. As Jack helped unpack the last of their grandmother's belongings, Ethan couldn't help but feel a sense of guilt gnawing at him. Despite knowing this was the best decision for her care, it felt like a failure on his part. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Sophia Wang, the head of the facility, entered with a warm smile. How are we settling in, Mrs. Reeves? Oh, just fine, dear, Ethan's grandmother replied, her voice carrying a cheerfulness that didn't quite reach her eyes. Everyone's been so kind. Dr. Wang turned to Ethan and Jack. Would you mind if I had a word with you both in my office? As they followed Dr. Wang. Ethan glanced back to see Lily curled up next to her great-grandmother, showing her a new drawing she had made. The sight both warmed and broke his heart. In Dr. Wang's office, the brothers sat across from her desk. tension evident in their postures. "I know this is a difficult transition for all of you," Dr. Wang began, her voice gentle but firm. "But I want to assure you that your grandmother will receive the best possible care here. Our staff is trained to provide not just medical support, but emotional and social engagement as well." Ethan nodded, trying to push down the lump in his throat. "We appreciate that, Dr. Wang. It's just, she's always been there for us. It feels wrong to leave her here." "Doctor." Wang leaned forward, her eyes filled with understanding. "Mr. Reeves, you're not leaving her. You're ensuring she gets the specialized care she needs. That's an act of love." As Dr. Wang outlined the facility's programs and care plans, Ethan found his mind drifting to the research he and Dr. Martinez were working on. They were making progress, but would it be fast enough to make a difference for his grandmother? "Ethan," Jack's voice broke through his thoughts. "Did you hear what Dr. Wang said about the family support group?" Ethan blinked, refocusing on the conversation. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" Dr. Wang smiled patiently. "We have a support group for family members of our residents. It can be incredibly helpful to connect with others going through similar experiences. I think both of you, and even young Lily, might benefit from it." As they made their way back to their grandmother's room, Ethan felt a mix of emotions swirling within him. The guilt was still there, but it was tempered now by a sense of cautious hope. This place, with its specialized care and support systems, could provide his grandmother with a quality of life they had been struggling to maintain at home. The scene that greeted them as they entered the room caught Ethan by surprise. Lily was leading a small group of residents in a sing-along, her clear young voice ringing out as she taught them a song she had learned in school. His grandmother sat in her chair clapping along, a genuine smile lighting up her face. "Well, would you look at that?" Jack murmured, a note of wonder in his voice. "Looks like Lily's already making friends." As the impromptu concert came to an end, Ethan's grandmother beckoned him over. "Ethan, dear, come sit with me for a moment." He perched on the arm of her chair, taking her hand in his. "How are you feeling, Grandma?" She patted his hand, her eyes clear and focused. "I'm okay, dear. This isn't how I imagined spending my golden years, but then again, life rarely goes according to plan, does it?" Ethan felt tears pricking at his eyes. "I'm so sorry, Grandma. I wish—" "Now, none of that." She cut him off gently. "You and Jack have done more than I could have ever asked for. But now it's time for you to focus on your work, on Lily, on your own lives. I'll be fine here." As Ethan looked into his grandmother's eyes, he saw not just love and acceptance, but a strength that took his breath away. Even in the face of this devastating disease, she was thinking of others, putting her family's needs before her own fears. The time to leave came all too soon. As they said their goodbyes, promising to visit in a few days, Ethan felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. This was the end of an era, the closing of a chapter in their family's story. In the car ride home, a heavy silence filled the air. Lily, exhausted from the emotional day, had fallen asleep in the back seat. Jack drove, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "We did the right thing, didn't we?" Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ethan took a deep breath, thinking of his grandmother's strength, of Lily's resilience, of the love that bound their family together. "Yeah," he replied, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. "Yeah, we did." As they pulled into the driveway of their now quieter home, Ethan made a silent promise to himself and to his grandmother. He would pour everything he had into his research, fighting for a future where families wouldn't have to face the heartbreak of Alzheimer's. He would cherish every moment with Lily, passing on the values and love his grandmother had instilled in him. And he would face each day with the same strength and grace his grandmother had shown, honoring her legacy in everything he did. The road ahead was still long and uncertain, filled with challenges they had yet to face. But as Ethan carried a sleeping Lily into the house, with Jack by his side, he felt a glimmer of hope. They had weathered this storm together, as a family. And whatever came next, they would face it the same way. With love, with courage, and with the unbreakable bonds that tied them together. As the door closed behind them, Ethan took one last look at the setting sun. Tomorrow would be a new day, bringing with it new challenges and new opportunities. But for now, in this moment, he allowed himself to feel not just the sadness of the day's events, but also a profound gratitude for the love that had brought them this far, and the hope that would carry them forward. The soft hum of laboratory equipment filled the air as Ethan peered intently at the holographic display before him. Streams of data flowed across the screen, each pixel potentially holding the key to unlocking the mysteries of Alzheimer's. He had been working tirelessly for weeks, fueled by a mixture of caffeine, determination, and the memory of his grandmother's smile. "Ethan?" Dr. Martinez's voice broke through his concentration. "I think you need to see this." He turned to find his colleague gesturing excitedly at her own display. As Ethan moved closer, his eyes widened in recognition. The protein markers they had been tracking showed a distinct pattern, one they had never seen before. "Is that what I think it is?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Martinez nodded, a cautious smile playing on her lips. "It could be. If these results hold up under further testing, we might have just identified a new early indicator for Alzheimer's, one that appears years before any symptoms manifest." The implications of this discovery washed over Ethan like a tidal wave. Early detection could mean earlier intervention, potentially slowing the progression of the disease before it could wreak its terrible havoc on the mind. As they dove into analyzing the data, time seemed to lose all meaning. It wasn't until Ethan's phone buzzed insistently that he realized how late it had gotten. It was a text from Jack. "Lily's school called. She's in the nurse's office. Not feeling well, can you pick her up?" Reality came crashing back. Ethan glanced at the clock, realizing with a start that it was well past noon. He had promised Lily he would have lunch with her today, a promise he had completely forgotten in the excitement of their potential breakthrough. "I'm sorry, Isabella," Ethan said, already gathering his things. "I need to go. Family emergency." "Doctor." Martinez waved him off understandingly. Go, family comes first. I'll continue running the analyses and send you the results later." The drive to Lily's school was a blur of conflicting emotions. Excitement about the research breakthrough warred with guilt over forgetting his promise to Lily, and worry about her well-being. As he pulled into the school parking lot, Ethan took a deep breath, trying to center himself. He found Lily in the nurse's office, curled up on a cot, her face pale and drawn. "Daddy," she mumbled as he entered, reaching out for him. Ethan's heart clenched as he gathered her into his arms. "I'm here, sweetheart. What's wrong?" "My tummy hurts," Lily whimpered, "and I'm sad. I missed you at lunch today." The guilt hit Ethan like a physical blow. "I'm so sorry, Lil. Daddy got caught up at work. But I'm here now and we're going to get you feeling better, okay?" As they drove home, Lily dozed in the back seat and Ethan's mind raced. He had been so focused on his research, on finding a cure for Alzheimer's, that he had been neglecting the very reason he was fighting so hard: his family. At home, after settling Lily in bed with some soup and her favorite stuffed animal, Ethan found himself in the kitchen, staring at the family photos on the refrigerator. There was one of his grandmother, taken just a few weeks ago at Serene Meadows. Despite the unfamiliar surroundings, her smile was warm and genuine, her eyes twinkling with the same love and mischief they always had. The sound of the front door opening announced Jack's arrival. "How's our girl?" he asked, concern etched on his face. "Resting now," Ethan replied, running a hand through his hair. "Jack, I think I've been losing sight of what's really important." Jack leaned against the counter, his expression understanding. "The research." Ethan nodded. "We had a breakthrough today. Potentially huge. But I missed lunch with Lily, forgot I'd even promised to be there. And it's not just today. I've been so focused on finding a cure, on helping people in the future, that I'm missing what's right in front of me." "Ethan," Jack said softly, "what you're doing is important. Revolutionary even. But you're right. It can't come at the cost of the present." As the brothers talked, Ethan felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. Jack had always been his sounding board, his anchor in turbulent times. Together they brainstormed ways to better balance Ethan's research with family time, setting strict work hours, scheduling regular family outings, and even involving Lily in some of the less technical aspects of his work to help her understand why it was so important to him. Later that evening, as Ethan sat by Lily's bedside, gently stroking her hair as she slept, his phone buzzed with an email from Dr. Martinez. The latest test results had confirmed their earlier findings. Their breakthrough was real. Ethan felt a surge of excitement, but it was tempered now by a new perspective. Yes, this discovery could potentially help millions of people in the future. But right here, right now, his daughter needed him. His family needed him. He leaned down, placing a soft kiss on Lily's forehead. "I love you, sweetheart," he whispered, "more than all the stars in the sky." As he left Lily's room, Ethan paused by the framed photo of his mother in the hallway. He could almost hear her voice, a memory from long ago. "Ethan, my love, life is about balance. Your mind may change the world, but it's your heart that will make that change matter." With renewed determination, Ethan headed to his home office. He had an email to write to Dr. Martinez, outlining a new approach to their work schedule, one that would allow for groundbreaking research while also honoring the importance of family time. As he typed, Ethan felt a sense of peace settle over him. The road ahead was still long and challenging, but he was finding his balance between the cutting-edge science that could change the future and the simple, profound moments of love and connection in the present. In that moment, Ethan realized that the cure for Alzheimer's, the thing he had been fighting so hard for, wasn't just about preserving memories. It was about protecting the ability to make new ones, to connect, to love. And in his quest to save those precious abilities for others, he couldn't afford to lose sight of them in his own life. With a small smile, Ethan added one more item to his to-do list for the next day. Lunch with Lily, no exceptions. It was a small step, but an important one. A reminder that in the grand equation of life, love and family were the most critical variables of all. The cheerful chaos of the elementary school science fair filled the gymnasium with a cacophony of excited voices and the occasional pop of an overzealous experiment. Ethan wove through the crowd, balancing a tray of coffee cups, his eyes scanning the rows of project displays for a familiar face. He found Lily standing proudly next to her exhibit, her curls bouncing as she enthusiastically explained her project to a small group of parents and teachers. As Ethan approached, he couldn't help but smile at the title of her display. "How Our Brains Remember, A Journey Through Neurons." "And this is a model of a synapse," Lily was saying, pointing to a colorful clay sculpture. "It's where neurons talk to each other. When we make a memory, lots of synapses fire together." Ethan felt a swell of pride mixed with a twinge of nostalgia. His daughter's interest in neuroscience was a beautiful bridge between his work and her world, but it also served as a poignant reminder of why that work was so crucial. "Great job, sweetheart," Ethan said, handing Lily her hot chocolate. "You've really done your research." Lily beamed up at him. "Thanks, Daddy. I interviewed Dr. Martinez and everything. She said I asked better questions than some of her students." As the science fair continued, Ethan found himself drawn into conversations with other parents, many of whom were curious about his work once they learned of his connection to Lily's project. He explained his research in simple terms, careful not to overstate their recent breakthrough, but unable to fully hide his excitement about its potential. "So, this could help catch Alzheimer's early?" one mother asked, her eyes wide with hope. "My dad's been showing signs and we're all so scared," Ethan nodded, his voice gentle. "It's still in the early stages, but yes, that's the goal. To catch it early enough to make a real difference in treatment." As he spoke, Ethan couldn't help but think of his grandmother. It had been several weeks since they had moved her to Serene Meadows, and while the transition had been difficult, there were glimmers of hope. The specialized care and structured environment seemed to be helping, slowing the progression of her confusion and agitation. The science fair wound down, and as Ethan helped Lily pack up her project, his phone buzzed with a text from Jack. "Grandma's having a good day. Asked to see the kids. Thinking of bringing them to Serene Meadows after the fair. You in?" Ethan showed the message to Lily, whose face lit up. "Can we, Daddy? Please. I want to show great-grandma my project." The drive to Serene Meadows was filled with Lily's excited chatter about the science fair and her plans to explain her project to her great-grandmother. Ethan listened, marveling at his daughter's ability to bridge the complex world of neuroscience with the simple, profound love she had for her great-grandmother. They found Jack in the facility's sunny common room, surrounded by a small group of residents. He was in the middle of what appeared to be a lively story, his animated gestures drawing chuckles from his audience. "Uncle Jack!" Lily called out, rushing over to hug him. Jack scooped her up, grinning. "There's my favorite scientist. How is the fair?" As Lily launched into a detailed account of her day, Ethan scanned the room for his grandmother. He found her sitting by the window, a serene smile on her face as she watched the scene unfold. "Hi, Grandma," Ethan said softly, kneeling beside her chair. How are you feeling today?" His grandmother turned to him, her eyes clear and focused. "Ethan, my dear boy, I'm having a wonderful day, and it just got even better now that you're here." The clarity in her voice, the recognition in her eyes, it was like a gift, a precious moment of connection that Ethan knew to cherish. Lily bounded over, her project in hand. "Great, Grandma, look what I made for the science fair. It's all about how our brains work and how we make memories." As Lily began to explain her project, Ethan watched in awe as his grandmother engaged with her, asking questions and sharing her own observations. It was a beautiful exchange, a bridge between generations built on love and a shared fascination with the mysteries of the mind. "You know," his grandmother said, her voice taking on a wistful tone, "I may not remember what I had for breakfast this morning, but I remember the day your mother won her school science fair. She was about your age, Lily, and just as excited as you are now." Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. These moments of clarity, of shared memories, were becoming rarer, making them all the more precious. As the afternoon wore on, other residents gathered around, drawn in by Lily's enthusiasm and the warmth of the family gathering. Ethan found himself in conversation with an elderly man whose wife was also a resident at Serene Meadows. "It's not easy, is it?" the man said, his eyes fixed on his wife across the room. "Watching someone you love slip away bit by bit." Ethan nodded, feeling a kinship with this stranger who understood the unique pain of loving someone with Alzheimer's. "No, it's not. But there's hope. We're making progress in research every day." The man turned to him, a spark of interest in his eyes. "You're a researcher." As Ethan explained his work, he was struck by the man's keen questions and genuine interest. Here was someone who understood the stakes on a deeply personal level, who saw beyond the scientific jargon to the real-world impact of the research. By the time they were ready to leave, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. Seeing his grandmother's moments of clarity, witnessing Lily's passionate explanation of neuroscience, and connecting with others affected by Alzheimer's, it all served to remind him of why his work was so vital. As they said their goodbyes, his grandmother held onto his hand a moment longer. "Ethan," she said, her voice soft but clear, "I may not always remember the details, but I never forget the love. Thank you for giving me so much to love." Ethan felt tears prick at his eyes. "We love you too, Grandma. So very much." On the drive home, with Lily dozing in the back seat and Jack following in his own car, Ethan's mind was abuzz with new ideas. The conversations at Serene Meadows had sparked thoughts about potential real-world applications for their research, ways to bridge the gap between the lab and the lives of those affected by Alzheimer's. He made a mental note to discuss with Dr. Martinez the possibility of setting up a community outreach program, perhaps partnering with care facilities like Serene Meadows to gather more data and provide support to families. As they pulled into their driveway, Ethan glanced at Lily in the rearview mirror. Her project lay beside her, a tangible symbol of the bridge she had built between his world of research and their family's journey with Alzheimer's. In that moment, Ethan felt a profound sense of gratitude for his brilliant, compassionate daughter, for his supportive brother, for his grandmother's enduring love, and for the opportunity to do work that could make a real difference in the world. The path ahead was still long and uncertain, but Ethan no longer felt overwhelmed by it. Instead, he felt inspired to push harder in his research, to love more deeply in his personal life, and to always remember that the most important bridges were those built by understanding, compassion, and love. As he carried a sleeping Lily into the house, Ethan made a silent promise to himself and to all those touched by Alzheimer's. He would continue to fight, to research, to love, and to hope. Because in the end, it was these connections, these bridges of understanding between science and humanity, between memory and love, that would light the way forward. The soft glow of the computer screen illuminated Ethan's face as he pored over the latest test results. The lab was quiet, most of his colleagues having left hours ago, but Ethan couldn't tear himself away. They were close to something big. He could feel it in his bones. A gentle knock on the door broke his concentration. He looked up to see Dr. Martinez, a concerned smile on her face. "Ethan, it's past midnight. Don't you think it's time to call it a day?" Ethan blinked, surprised by the late hour. "I just need a few more minutes, Isabella. I think I'm onto something here." Dr. Martinez walked over, peering at his screen. Her eyes widened as she took in the data. "Is that what I think it is?" Ethan nodded, excitement building in his voice. "The new compound we've been working on. It's showing a 67% success rate in reversing synaptic degradation in our lab models. Isabella, this could be the breakthrough we've been waiting for." The two researchers spent the next hour excitedly discussing the implications of their findings. If these results held up in further testing, they could be looking at a treatment that not only slowed the progression of Alzheimer's, but potentially reversed some of its effects. As the initial excitement began to ebb, replaced by the sobering reality of the long road still ahead, Ethan's phone buzzed with a text. It was from Jack. "Hope you're not still at the lab. Don't forget, we're taking Grandma to the park tomorrow. Lily's been looking forward to it all week." Guilt washed over Ethan as he realized he had nearly forgotten their plans. He looked at Dr. Martinez, conflict clear on his face. She smiled understandingly. "Go home, Ethan. Be with your family. The research will still be here when you get back." The next morning, Ethan found himself at Serene Meadows helping his grandmother into her wheelchair for their outing. Despite the excitement of the previous night's breakthrough, he felt fully present in this moment, taking in every detail of his grandmother's face. "You look tired, dear," she said, patting his hand. "Are you getting enough rest?" Ethan chuckled softly. Even in the midst of her illness, his grandmother's instinct to care for him remained strong. "I'm fine, Grandma. Just been working hard on some exciting new research." As they made their way to the nearby park, Lily skipping ahead and Jack pushing the wheelchair, Ethan found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. The fear and uncertainty of the initial diagnosis seemed a lifetime ago. At the park, they found a quiet spot near a small pond. Lily immediately set about feeding the ducks, while Jack spread out a picnic blanket. Ethan helped his grandmother from the wheelchair to a comfortable seat on the blanket, making sure she was warm enough in the crisp autumn air. "It's a beautiful day, isn't it?" his grandmother said, her eyes bright as she took in the scenery. "Reminds me of the picnics we used to have when your mother was little." Ethan felt a familiar pang at the mention of his mother, but it was accompanied by a warm sense of gratitude for these moments of clarity. "Tell me about those picnics, Grandma," he encouraged gently. As his grandmother began to recount stories from the past, her voice stronger and more animated than it had been in weeks, Ethan found himself transported. He could almost see his mother as a young girl, laughing and playing in a park much like this one. Lily soon joined them, snuggling up to her great-grandmother and listening intently to the stories. Jack caught Ethan's eye over their heads, a look of shared wonder passing between the brothers. These moments were precious, all the more so for their rarity. As the afternoon wore on, Ethan's mind occasionally drifted to the lab and their recent breakthrough, but each time he gently guided his thoughts back to the present, determined to be fully engaged in this family time. It was during a lull in the conversation, as Lily and Jack went to get ice cream from a nearby vendor, that his grandmother turned to him with a knowing look. "You've made a discovery, haven't you?" she asked. "I can see it in your eyes, the same look your grandfather used to get when he was onto something big in his research." Ethan was taken aback by her perceptiveness. "We might have," he admitted. "It's still early, but it could be significant." His grandmother smiled, a mixture of pride and something else, perhaps resignation, in her eyes. "That's wonderful, dear. You know, I may not understand all the science, but I understand the heart behind it. You're doing this for all of us, aren't you? Not just for me, but for every family facing this terrible disease." Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. "I am," he said softly. I wish we'd made this breakthrough sooner. For you." She reached out, taking his hand in hers. Her grip was frailer than he remembered, but still full of warmth. "Ethan, my dear boy, listen to me. What you're doing is important, but don't lose sight of what's right in front of you. These moments right here, right now, they're the most precious gift of all." As Jack and Lily returned with ice cream, Ethan found himself blinking back tears. His grandmother's words had struck a chord deep within him, reminding him of the delicate balance he was constantly striving to maintain between his work and his family. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of laughter, stories, and simple joys. Ethan found himself fully immersed in the moment, treasuring every smile, every touch, every shared glance. As they prepared to leave, helping his grandmother back into her wheelchair, Ethan was struck by a powerful realization. Yes, his work in the lab was crucial, potentially life-changing for millions. But these moments, the love, the connections, the memories being forged even in the face of a disease that threatened to erase them, this was why he fought so hard. On the drive home, with Lily chattering excitedly in the back seat about their day, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. He would return to the lab tomorrow, throwing himself into the next phase of testing with vigor. But he would do so with a new perspective, a deeper understanding of the true impact of his work. As they pulled into their driveway, Ethan made a silent promise to himself, to his family, and to all those affected by Alzheimer's. He would continue to push the boundaries of science, to search tirelessly for a cure. But he would also cherish every moment, every memory, every fleeting connection. Because in the end it was these bonds of love and understanding that gave meaning to all his efforts. The breakthrough in the lab was exciting, potentially world-changing, but the real breakthrough, Ethan realized, was happening right here, in his heart, as he learned to balance the urgency of his research with the preciousness of the present moment. It was a delicate equilibrium, but one he was determined to maintain for the sake of his family, his work, and his own soul. The conference hall buzzed with anticipation as scientists, researchers, and medical professionals from around the world gathered for the International Alzheimer's Symposium. Ethan stood backstage, his heart racing as he reviewed his presentation one last time. This was the moment they had been working towards for months, the unveiling of their groundbreaking research. Dr. Martinez appeared at his side, giving his arm a reassuring squeeze. "Ready to change the world, Ethan?" He took a deep breath, nodding. "As ready as I'll ever be. I just wish that your grandmother could be here," she finished for him, understanding in her eyes. "She is, Ethan. In every word you're about to speak, in every life this research might change, she's here." As Ethan stepped onto the stage, the bright lights momentarily blinding him, he felt a surge of emotion. This wasn't just about presenting research findings. This was about offering hope to millions of families like his own, facing the long goodbye of Alzheimer's. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady despite his nerves, "today I'm honored to share with you a breakthrough that could potentially revolutionize how we approach Alzheimer's treatment." As Ethan delved into the technical aspects of their research, explaining the innovative compound they had developed and its promising results in reversing synaptic degradation, he couldn't help but think of his grandmother, of her strength, her love, her unwavering support, even as the disease chipped away at her memories. The audience listened with rapt attention, the implications of what Ethan was presenting slowly dawning on them. When he finished speaking, there was a moment of stunned silence before the room erupted in applause and excited chatter. The Q&A session that followed was intense, with fellow researchers and medical professionals probing every aspect of their work. Ethan and Dr. Martinez fielded the questions with confidence, their months of tireless work evident in their thorough responses. As the session wound down, a woman in the back of the room stood up. "Dr. Reeves," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I'm not a scientist. I'm here because my husband was diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's last year. Can you tell me what this means for families like mine? Is there real hope?" Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. This was why he had poured his heart and soul into this research. Not for the accolades or the scientific recognition, but for people like this woman, facing the devastating reality of Alzheimer's. "What I can tell you," Ethan replied, his voice gentle but firm, "is that we are closer than we've ever been to effectively treating this disease. Our research is still in its early stages, and we have a long road of clinical trials ahead. But yes, there is real, tangible hope, and we won't stop fighting until we turn that hope into reality." The woman nodded, tears in her eyes, and Ethan saw in her face the same mixture of fear and determination he had seen in his own family's eyes. As the symposium continued, Ethan found himself surrounded by colleagues eager to discuss potential collaborations and next steps. The excitement in the air was palpable. They all knew they were on the cusp of something truly revolutionary. In a quiet moment between sessions, Ethan slipped away to call home. Lily answered, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Daddy, did you tell them about the memory medicine? Did they like it?" Ethan couldn't help but smile at his daughter's enthusiastic questions. "They did, sweetheart. They liked it very much. How's great-grandma doing today?" She's good, we're looking at old pictures. She remembered the name of her first dog today. The joy in Lily's voice at this small victory brought tears to Ethan's eyes. These moments, the small triumphs, the fleeting connections, they were what made all the long hours and sleepless nights worth it. As Ethan rejoined the symposium, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead was still long and challenging. There would be setbacks, obstacles to overcome, moments of doubt. But there was also hope, real, tangible hope, not just for his grandmother, but for millions of families around the world. The day wound down with a gala dinner, where Ethan found himself seated next to Dr. Sophia Wang from Serene Meadows. "Your grandmother would be so proud, Ethan," she said warmly, "not just of your research, but of the man you've become through this journey." Ethan nodded, feeling a mix of emotions wash over him. "I just wish she could fully understand what we've accomplished. On her good days, she grasps it, but..." Dr. Wang placed a comforting hand on his arm. "Ethan, your grandmother may not always remember the details of your work, but she never forgets the love behind it. That's what matters most." As the evening drew to a close, Ethan found himself on the hotel balcony, gazing out at the city lights. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, the late nights in the lab, the emotional roller coaster of caring for his grandmother, the constant balancing act between his work and his family. He thought about Lily, with her boundless curiosity and compassion, bridging the gap between complex neuroscience and simple, profound love. He thought about Jack, whose unwavering support had been a cornerstone of their family's strength, and he thought about his grandmother, whose grace in the face of this devastating disease had inspired him every step of the way. A shooting star streaked across the sky, and Ethan found himself making a wish, not for scientific accolades or professional success, but for more moments of clarity with his grandmother, more opportunities to tell her how much she meant to him, how much she had shaped the person he had become. As he prepared to return home the next day, Ethan felt a sense of peace settle over him. The research breakthrough was monumental, potentially life-changing for millions, but the real breakthrough, he realized, had happened in his heart. He had learned to balance the urgency of his work with the preciousness of the present moment, to find hope in the face of heartbreak, and to see the profound connections that existed even as memories faded. Ethan knew that the road ahead would still have its challenges. There would be more long nights in the lab, more difficult days with his grandmother, more moments of doubt and fear. But he also knew that he was not walking this path alone. He had his family, his colleagues, and now a worldwide community of researchers and families all working towards the same goal. As he drifted off to sleep, Ethan's last thoughts were of his grandmother's smile, of Lily's laughter, of Jack's steadfast presence. Tomorrow, he would return home, ready to face whatever came next, in the lab, in his family, in his heart. Because now more than ever he understood that the most powerful force in the fight against Alzheimer's wasn't just the science in his mind, but the love in his heart. And that love, he knew, was the truest source of hope of all. The familiar hum of airplane engines filled Ethan's ears as he gazed out the window, watching the clouds drift by. His mind was still buzzing from the events of the symposium, replaying key moments and conversations. The overwhelmingly positive response to their research had been more than he could have hoped for, but with it came a new set of challenges and expectations. As the plane began its descent into San Francisco, Ethan's thoughts turned to his family. He couldn't wait to share the details of the symposium with Jack and Lily, to see the pride in their eyes. But most of all, he longed to tell his grandmother about the impact their work was already having. The airport was a blur of activity, but Ethan's heart leapt when he spotted Lily's excited face in the crowd, perched on Jack's shoulders. "Daddy!" Lily squealed, nearly launching herself off Jack in her eagerness to reach Ethan. He caught her in a tight embrace, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Hey, sweetheart. I've missed you so much." Jack approached, a wide grin on his face. "Welcome back, little brother, or should I say Dr. Famous?" Ethan chuckled, giving Jack a one-armed hug while still holding Lily. "Hardly, but it went well, really well, actually." As they made their way to the car, Lily bombarded Ethan with questions about the symposium, her curiosity seemingly endless. "Did you tell them about the memory medicine, Daddy? Did they understand how it works? Can we give some to great-grandma now?" Ethan felt a pang in his chest at the hopeful tone in Lily's voice. "It's not quite ready for that yet, sweetheart. We still have a lot of work to do before we can use it to help people, but we're getting closer every day." The drive home was filled with animated conversation as Ethan recounted the highlights of the symposium. Jack listened intently, asking insightful questions that reminded Ethan how fortunate he was to have such a supportive brother. As they pulled into the driveway, Ethan felt a mixture of exhaustion and excitement wash over him. Home had never looked so inviting. Inside, he was greeted by the warm aroma of Maria's cooking. "Welcome home, Mr. Ethan," she called from the kitchen. "I've made your favorite lasagna to celebrate." Dinner was a joyous affair, with Ethan sharing more details about the symposium and the family filling him in on what he'd missed. Lily proudly showed him a new drawing she'd made for her great-grandmother, explaining how she'd used different colors to represent different parts of the brain. After Lily was tucked into bed, Ethan and Jack settled on the back porch, each nursing a beer. The night was cool and clear, stars twinkling overhead. "So," Jack said, breaking the comfortable silence, "what happens now? With the research, I mean." Ethan took a long swig of his beer, considering the question. "Now comes the hard part. We've got the attention and support of the scientific community, but that means increased scrutiny too. We need to move forward with clinical trials, secure more funding, navigate the regulatory landscape." He trailed off, suddenly overwhelmed by the magnitude of the task ahead. Jack placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Hey, you've got this. You and Dr. Martinez have already accomplished something incredible, and you've got a whole team of brilliant minds working with you." Ethan nodded, grateful for his brother's unwavering support. "Thanks, Jack. It's just, sometimes I worry that we're giving people false hope. What if the treatment doesn't work in humans the way it does in our lab models? What if—" "Stop right there," Jack interrupted firmly. "You can't think like that. You're offering people something they haven't had in a long time. Real, tangible hope. Even if there are setbacks along the way, that hope is valuable in itself." As the brothers continued to talk, Ethan felt the weight of the past few days begin to lift. Jack had always had a way of grounding him, of helping him see the bigger picture. The next morning, Ethan woke early, eager to visit his grandmother at Serene Meadows. As he entered her room, he found her sitting by the window, Lily's memory board open on her lap. "Grandma?" he called softly. She looked up, her face lighting up with recognition. "Ethan, my dear boy. Come, sit with me. Tell me all about your trip." As Ethan settled into the chair beside her, he was struck by the clarity in her eyes. It was a good day, one of the increasingly rare ones where she seemed fully present. He began to tell her about the symposium, simplifying the complex science into terms she could understand. As he spoke, he watched her face carefully, looking for signs of confusion or fatigue. But she remained engaged, nodding and asking questions. "You know," she said when he had finished, "this reminds me of when your grandfather presented his research on renewable energy back in the 70s. People thought he was a bit mad at first, but he knew he was onto something important." Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. These moments of shared history, of his grandmother connecting past and present, were precious beyond measure. "I wish I could have known him better," Ethan said softly. His grandmother patted his hand. "Oh, he would have adored you, Ethan. He always said that the greatest achievements in science come from those who never lose sight of the human impact of their work. And that's exactly what you're doing." As their visit continued, Ethan found himself opening up about his fears and doubts, about the pressure he felt to deliver on the promise of their research. His grandmother listened attentively, her eyes full of understanding and love. "Ethan, my dear," she said finally, her voice gentle but firm, "you carry so much on your shoulders. But remember, you're not just fighting for a cure. You're fighting for more moments like this, moments of clarity, of connection, of love. No matter what happens with your research, that fight is always worthwhile." As Ethan left Serene Meadows later that morning, his grandmother's words echoed in his mind. He felt a renewed sense of purpose, a clearer understanding of why his work mattered so much. Driving home, he made a detour to his lab. The facility was quiet on a Sunday morning, but Ethan felt energized as he walked through the familiar space. He booted up his computer, fingers flying over the keyboard as he began to outline the next phase of their research. Hours passed unnoticed as Ethan worked, fueled by a mixture of inspiration and determination. It was only when his phone buzzed with a text from Jack. "Don't forget, family movie night tonight. Lily's choice, so brace yourself for unicorns. That Ethan realized how much time had passed. As he packed up to head home, Ethan felt a sense of balance he hadn't experienced in a long time. The excitement of his work, the love of his family, the precious moments with his grandmother, all of it combined to form a tapestry of purpose and meaning. The road ahead would be challenging, filled with long hours in the lab, difficult decisions, and inevitable setbacks. But Ethan knew he was exactly where he needed to be, doing exactly what he was meant to do. With a smile, he locked up the lab and headed home, ready to immerse himself in the simple joy of a family movie night. Because in the end, it was these moments of laughter, of love, of connection that gave his work its true meaning. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, Ethan was determined to cherish every one of them. The sterile hallways of the clinical trial center echoed with the sound of Ethan's footsteps as he made his way to the observation room. It had been 6 months since the symposium, and their groundbreaking research had progressed to human trials faster than anyone had dared to hope. As Ethan entered the room, he was greeted by Dr. Martinez and a team of researchers, all gathered around monitors displaying real-time data from their first group of trial participants. "How's it looking?" Ethan asked, his voice a mixture of hope and apprehension. Dr. Martinez turned to him, a cautious smile on her face. "So far, so good. We're seeing increased synaptic activity in 70% of the participants. It's early days, but it's promising." Ethan felt a surge of excitement tempered by the weight of responsibility. Each data point on those screens represented a real person, a family holding on to hope. He thought of his own grandmother, of how much he wished she could be part of these trials. As the day progressed, Ethan found himself constantly toggling between his roles as a scientist and as a grandson. He scrutinized the data with a researcher's eye, looking for patterns and anomalies. But he also saw each participant through the lens of his personal experience, imagining the stories and loved ones behind each case number. It was late afternoon when Dr. Martinez pulled him aside, her expression serious. "Ethan, we need to talk about participant 37. Ethan's heart sank. Participant 37 was a woman in her early 60s with a case of early-onset Alzheimer's that had progressed rapidly. She reminded Ethan painfully of his grandmother. "What's wrong?" he asked, bracing himself for bad news. "Nothing's wrong exactly," Dr. Martinez replied, a hint of excitement creeping into her voice. "In fact, something might be very right. Take a look at these scans." As Ethan examined the before and after brain scans of participant 37, his breath caught in his throat. The difference was striking. Areas that had shown significant atrophy were now displaying increased neural activity. Are we seeing actual regeneration?" Ethan asked, hardly daring to believe it. Dr. Martinez nodded, her eyes shining. "It appears so. We need to run more tests to confirm. But Ethan, this could be the breakthrough we've been hoping for." The rest of the day passed in a blur of excitement and intense work. As Ethan finally left the center, his mind was racing with the implications of what they had observed. He was so lost in thought that he almost missed the call from Jack. "Ethan, are you there?" Jack's voice crackled through the speaker. "Yeah, sorry. It's been an intense day. What's up?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "It's Grandma. She had a bad episode earlier. The staff at Serene Meadows got it under control, but I think you should come." Ethan felt his earlier elation evaporate, replaced by a cold knot of fear. "I'm on my way," he said, already changing direction towards Serene Meadows. The drive to the care facility was a stark reminder of the race they were running against time. For all the promise their research showed, for his grandmother it might be too late. He found Jack in the hallway outside their grandmother's room, his face drawn with worry. "She's calmer now," Jack said as Ethan approached. "But it was bad, Ethan. She didn't recognize any of us, got really agitated. They had to sedate her." Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. "Can we see her?" They entered the room quietly. Their grandmother lay in bed, her face peaceful in sleep, but somehow smaller and more fragile than Ethan remembered. He took her hand gently, marveling at how the same hands that had once seemed so strong and capable now felt as delicate as a bird's wings. "Oh, Grandma," he whispered, fighting back tears. "I wish you could see what we've accomplished. I wish you could know how much you've inspired all of this." As Ethan sat by his grandmother's bedside, with Jack a steady presence beside him, he found himself torn between two worlds. In one, he was a scientist on the brink of a monumental breakthrough, filled with hope for the future. In the other, he was a grandson watching his beloved grandmother slip away, powerless to stop it. Hours passed, and as night fell, their grandmother began to stir. Her eyes fluttered open, confusion clouding her gaze before recognition slowly dawned. "My boys," she murmured, a weak smile spreading across her face. "You're here." Ethan leaned in, squeezing her hand gently. "Of course we're here, Grandma. We'll always be here for you." She looked at him intently, a flash of her old sharpness in her eyes. "Your work," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "How is it going?" Even now, in her weakened state, she remembered. Ethan felt a wave of love and admiration wash over him. "It's going well, Grandma, really well. We're helping people." She nodded, satisfaction clear on her face. "Good, that's good. You keep fighting, Ethan. Not just for me, but for all the families out there. Promise me." "I promise, Grandma," Ethan said, his voice choked with emotion. "I won't give up." As their grandmother drifted back to sleep, Ethan and Jack sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The contrast between the hope of the day's earlier breakthrough and the stark reality of their grandmother's condition was almost too much to bear. It was Jack who finally broke the silence. "You know, Ethan, seeing you these past few months, the way you've balanced your research with being there for Grandma, for Lily, for all of us, I'm really proud of you, little brother." Ethan felt tears prick at his eyes. "I couldn't have done any of it without you, Jack. You've been our rock through all of this." As the night wore on, Ethan found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him to this point. The long nights in the lab, the emotional roller coaster of caring for his grandmother, the constant struggle to balance his work and his family, it had all led to this moment. He thought about participant 37, whose brain scans had shown such promise. He thought about his own grandmother, fighting so hard against the relentless tide of her disease. He thought about Lily, with her innocent hope for a memory medicine that could make everything better. In that quiet hospital room with the steady beep of monitors and the soft breathing of his sleeping grandmother, Ethan made a silent vow. He would push forward with their research, fighting with everything he had to turn the promise of their breakthrough into a reality. But he would also cherish every moment, every memory, every fleeting connection with his grandmother and his family. Because in the end, Ethan realized, the true triumph wasn't just in the scientific breakthroughs or the potential cures. It was in the love that sustained them through the trials, the bonds that grew stronger even as memories faded, and the hope that burned bright even in the darkest moments. As the first light of dawn began to creep through the windows, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead would be challenging, filled with more trials and hopefully more triumphs. But with his family by his side, and the memory of his grandmother's strength to guide him, Ethan knew he was ready to face whatever came next. In science and in life, in love and in loss, he would keep fighting. For his grandmother, for Lily, for every family facing the long goodbye of Alzheimer's. And in that fight, in that unwavering commitment to hope and to love, Ethan knew he had already found the greatest triumph of all. The soft glow of the computer screen illuminated Ethan's face as he pored over the latest data from the clinical trials. It was well past midnight, but sleep eluded him. The results were promising, more than promising, really. They were potentially life-changing. A soft knock at his home office door broke his concentration. He looked up to see Lily, rubbing her eyes sleepily, her favorite stuffed elephant tucked under her arm. "Daddy, why are you still awake?" she asked, her voice thick with sleep. Ethan smiled softly, pushing back from his desk and opening his arms. Lily climbed into his lap, snuggling against his chest. "I'm just looking at some important work, sweetheart. Why are you up?" "I had a dream about great-grandma," Lily said, her voice muffled against his shirt. "She remembered everything in my dream, even the name of my teacher." Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. It had been 3 months since that night at Serene Meadows, and his grandmother's condition had continued to deteriorate. The good days were becoming increasingly rare. "That sounds like a nice dream, Lil," he said, stroking her hair gently. "Maybe one day we can make that dream come true for lots of people like great-grandma." Lily looked up at him, her eyes wide and hopeful. "With your memory medicine?" Ethan nodded, feeling a mixture of hope and caution. "Maybe. We're working very hard on it." As he carried Lily back to bed, Tucking her in with a soft kiss on her forehead, Ethan found himself reflecting on the progress they had made. The clinical trials had expanded, with more participants showing significant improvements in cognitive function and memory recall. Participant 37, whose results had been so striking in the early days of the trial, had progressed to the point where she was now able to recognize family members she hadn't known for years. It was a success beyond their wildest hopes, but Ethan knew they couldn't celebrate yet. There was still so much work to be done. The next morning, as Ethan prepared for another day at the lab, he found Jack in the kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee. "Late night?" Jack asked, raising an eyebrow at Ethan's disheveled appearance. Ethan nodded, pouring himself a large mug of coffee. "Couldn't sleep. The latest trial results came in." Jack leaned forward, his expression a mixture of hope and apprehension. "And?" "It's good, Jack. Really good. We're seeing consistent improvements across the board. Cognitive function, memory recall, even some restoration of neural pathways we thought were permanently damaged." Jack let out a low whistle. "That's incredible, Ethan. So what's next?" Ethan took a long sip of his coffee, considering the question. "We need to expand the trials, gather more data, and then we start the process of getting FDA approval." The brothers sat in silence for a moment, the weight of what lay ahead settling over them. It was Jack who finally broke the silence. "Have you thought about Grandma? About getting her into the trial?" Ethan felt his heart clench. It was a question he had been grappling with for weeks. "I've thought about it," he admitted. "But her condition is so advanced now, and there are ethical considerations about enrolling a family member in a trial I'm directly involved with." Jack nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I get it. It's just seeing her like this, knowing there might be something that could help." "I know," Ethan said softly. "Believe me, I know." As Ethan made his way to the lab later that morning, his conversation with Jack weighed heavily on his mind. The ethical dilemma of potentially enrolling his grandmother in the trial was complex, but even more daunting was the fear of giving her false hope. At the lab, Ethan found Dr. Martinez already hard at work, her excitement palpable as she greeted him. "Ethan, you need to see this," she said, gesturing to her computer screen. "We've got the latest brain scans from Group C." As Ethan examined the images, he felt his breath catch in his throat. The before and after scans showed a marked increase in neural activity, particularly in areas associated with memory formation and recall. This is more than we hoped for," Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Martinez nodded, her eyes shining. "It's not just slowing the progression, Ethan. In some cases, it seems to be reversing it." As they spent the next few hours analyzing the data, discussing next steps and planning for the expansion of the trials, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. The work they were doing wasn't just scientifically groundbreaking, it had the potential to change millions of lives. It was late afternoon when Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from Jack. "Grandma's having a good day, asking for you. Can you come by Serene Meadows?" Ethan felt a mixture of joy and apprehension as he made his way to the care facility. These moments of clarity had become so rare. Each one felt like a precious gift. He found his grandmother sitting in her favorite armchair by the window, a photo album open on her lap. Her face lit up as she saw him enter. "Ethan, my dear boy," she said, her voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "Come sit with me." "I've been looking at old pictures." As Ethan settled beside her, his grandmother began to recount stories from the photographs. Tales of his mother as a child, of family vacations long past, of moments he had never known about, but now felt as vivid as if he had been there. "You know," she said, pausing on a photo of Ethan's grandfather in his lab, "seeing you work so hard on your research reminds me so much of him. He always said that the greatest scientific achievements were the ones that improved people's lives." Ethan felt tears prick at his eyes. "I wish I could have known him better," he said softly. His grandmother patted his hand. "Oh, he would have been so proud of you, Ethan, just as I am." As they continued to look through the album, Ethan found himself torn. Part of him wanted to tell his grandmother about the breakthrough, about the hope it represented. But another part feared raising expectations, of promising something he wasn't sure he could deliver. In the end, it was his grandmother who broached the subject. "Your work, Ethan, how is it progressing?" Ethan took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "It's going well, Grandma. We're seeing some really promising results in our trials." She nodded, a knowing look in her eyes. "That's wonderful, dear. You know, even if it's too late for me, knowing that you're out there fighting for others like me, it gives me peace." Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. "It's not too late, Grandma. We're not giving up." As the visit drew to a close, Ethan helped his grandmother back to her room. As he was about to leave, she called him back. "Ethan," she said, her voice suddenly serious, "promise me something." "Anything, Grandma. No matter what happens with your research, with me. Promise me you'll remember to live, to love, to cherish the moments you have with your family." Ethan nodded, blinking back tears. "I promise, Grandma." As he left Serene Meadows, Ethan felt a mixture of emotions swirling within him. The hope represented by their research breakthroughs, the bittersweetness of his grandmother's good days becoming rarer, the weight of the promise he had just made. Driving home, Ethan made a decision. He would talk to Dr. Martinez about the possibility of including his grandmother in the next phase of the trial. It was a long shot, given her advanced condition, but he had to try. He owed it to her, to his family, to every person facing the long goodbye of Alzheimer's. As he pulled into his driveway, Ethan saw Lily and Jack in the front yard, engaged in what appeared to be an intense game of make-believe. The sight brought a smile to his face, reminding him of his grandmother's words. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever triumphs or setbacks awaited in the lab, Ethan knew he had to keep that promise. To live, to love, to cherish every moment. Because in the end, it was those moments of connection, of joy, of simple togetherness that gave meaning to all his efforts. With renewed determination, Ethan stepped out of the car, ready to join his daughter and brother in their game. Tomorrow would bring new challenges in the lab, new hurdles to overcome. But for now, in this moment, he would embrace the simple joy of being with his family, creating memories that would sustain him through whatever lay ahead. The conference room at Serene Meadows was quiet, the air heavy with anticipation. Ethan sat beside Dr. Martinez, facing a panel of medical ethicists, administrators, and his grandmother's primary care physician. On the table before them lay a thick folder, the application to include his grandmother in the next phase of their clinical trial. Dr. Reeves, the head of the ethics committee, began, her voice gentle but firm. "We've reviewed your application thoroughly. While the results of your trials so far are undeniably impressive, we have some concerns about including your grandmother as a participant." Ethan nodded, his heart racing. He had anticipated this, had prepared for it, but the reality of the moment still felt overwhelming. "I understand your concerns," he said, his voice steady despite his nerves. "But I believe that my grandmother's participation could not only potentially benefit her, but also provide valuable data for our research, especially given the advanced stage of her condition." Dr. Martinez chimed in, outlining the safeguards they had put in place to ensure the trial's integrity wouldn't be compromised by Ethan's personal connection. As the discussion continued, Ethan found his mind drifting to the conversation he'd had with his grandmother just days earlier. "Ethan, my dear," she had said, her voice weak but her eyes clear, "if there's even a chance that this could help others like me, I want to do it." It's not just about me anymore. Her words had strengthened his resolve, reminding him of why they had started this journey in the first place. It wasn't just about finding a cure, it was about giving hope, about fighting for every moment of clarity, every precious memory. The meeting stretched on for hours with questions about methodology, ethics, and potential outcomes. Ethan and Dr. Martinez answered each one, their passion for the research evident in every word. Finally, as the afternoon sun began to cast long shadows across the room, the committee reached their decision. Dr. Reeves, the head of the committee, said, "After careful consideration, we've decided to approve your grandmother's participation in the trial, with some additional oversight measures in place." Ethan felt a wave of emotion wash over him, relief, excitement, and a touch of fear. This was it, the moment they had been working towards for so long. As he and Dr. Martinez left the meeting, the reality of what lay ahead began to sink in. They would be administering the treatment to his grandmother, the woman who had raised him, who had inspired this entire journey. The stakes had never felt higher. "Ethan," Dr. Martinez said softly, placing a hand on his arm, "Are you okay?" He nodded, taking a deep breath. "Yeah, I need a moment." Understanding shone in her eyes. "Take all the time you need. This is a big step for all of us." Ethan found himself wandering the grounds of Serene Meadows, his mind whirling with thoughts and emotions. He found a quiet bench overlooking a small garden, the same spot where he had often sat with his grandmother on her good days. As he sat there, watching the play of light and shadow across the flowers, Ethan felt the weight of the decision he had just set in motion. They would be starting the treatment soon, entering a new phase of their journey with Alzheimer's. A journey filled with hope but also with uncertainty. His phone buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. It was a text from Lily. "Daddy, when are you coming home? I want to show you my new science project." A smile tugged at Ethan's lips. Even in the midst of such momentous decisions, life went on. His daughter still needed him, still looked to him with eyes full of wonder and curiosity. As he made his way back to his car, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. Yes, they were embarking on a new and uncertain phase of their research. Yes, the stakes were higher than ever, but they were also on the cusp of something potentially world-changing. The drive home was a blur of emotions and plans. Ethan's mind raced with thoughts of treatment protocols, data analysis, and the countless variables they would need to monitor. But as he pulled into his driveway and saw Lily's excited face pressed against the window, another thought pushed its way to the forefront. No matter what happened with the trial, no matter what challenges lay ahead, he had to remember to be present, to cherish these moments with his daughter, with Jack, with his grandmother, because in the end, that's what all of this was about. Not just extending life, but making every moment count. As he stepped out of the car, Lily barreled into him, her words tumbling out in an excited rush about her science project. Ethan scooped her up, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair, feeling the solid warmth of her small body against his chest. "Slow down, sweetheart," he laughed. "Start from the beginning. Tell me all about it." As Lily launched into a detailed explanation of her project, something involving plant growth and different types of music, Ethan felt a sense of peace settle over him. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new data to analyze, new hurdles to overcome. But for now, in this moment, he was exactly where he needed to be. Later that evening, after Lily was tucked into bed, Ethan found Jack on the back porch, 2 beers in hand. "Thought you might need this," Jack said, offering one to Ethan. "How did it go?" Ethan took a long swig before answering. "They approved it. Grandma's going to be part of the trial." Jack let out a low whistle. "That's... wow. How do you feel about it?" "Honestly? Terrified, excited, hopeful, all at once." The brothers sat in companionable silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. It was Jack who finally broke the quiet. "You know, Ethan, no matter what happens with this trial with Grandma, I'm proud of you, of what you've accomplished, of how you've handled all of this. Mom would be proud too." Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. "Thanks, Jack. I couldn't have done any of this without you. You've been our rock through all of this." As the night wore on, the brothers talked about their hopes and fears for the trial, about memories of their grandmother in healthier days, about the future they were fighting for. And as Ethan finally headed to bed, exhausted but resolved, he felt a sense of calm settle over him. They were at a crossroads, poised on the brink of something that could change everything. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with potential triumphs and heartbreaks, but they would face it together, as a family, with love and hope lighting the way. Tomorrow would bring the start of a new chapter in their journey with Alzheimer's. But tonight, Ethan allowed himself to simply be grateful for his family, for the progress they had made, and for the hope that burned bright even in the darkest moments. As he drifted off to sleep, Ethan's last thoughts were of his grandmother's smile, of Lily's laughter, of Jack's unwavering support. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew that these bonds of love and family would give him the strength to face them, and in that knowledge, he found peace. The soft beep of medical equipment filled the air as Ethan sat beside his grandmother's bed, her frail hand clasped in his. It had been 6 months since she had started the trial, 6 months of hope, fear, and cautious optimism. "Ethan," his grandmother's voice was soft but clear. "Is that you, dear?" Ethan felt his heart leap. These moments of lucidity had been becoming more frequent over the past few weeks, each one a small victory in their battle against Alzheimer's. "Yes, Grandma, it's me," he replied, squeezing her hand gently. "How are you feeling today?" She smiled, her eyes focusing on his face with a clarity that still took his breath away. "Oh, I'm having a good day, I think. Lily was here earlier, wasn't she? She was telling me about her science fair project." Ethan nodded, fighting back tears of joy. Lily's visit had been yesterday, but the fact that his grandmother remembered it at all was nothing short of miraculous. As they talked, Ethan marveled at the changes he had witnessed over the course of the trial. While his grandmother's condition was far from cured, the improvements in her cognitive function and memory recall were undeniable. She was more present, more engaged, more herself. Dr. Martinez entered the room, a warm smile on her face. "How are we doing today, Mrs. Reeves?" "Oh, just fine, dear," Ethan's grandmother replied. "Ethan and I were just talking about Lily's science project. Did you know she's studying the effects of music on plant growth? Reminds me of when Ethan's mother did a similar project back in '82. She played Mozart for her tomatoes. They grew so big, we were eating tomato sandwiches for weeks." Ethan and Dr. Martinez exchanged a look of amazement. This level of detailed recall was beyond anything they had dared to hope for when they started the trial. As Dr. Martinez began her examination, Ethan stepped out into the hallway, needing a moment to collect himself. He found Jack there, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "Thought you could use this," Jack said, offering one to Ethan. "How is she?" Ethan took a sip, grateful for the warmth and caffeine. Jack, it's incredible. She remembered Lily's visit from yesterday. She even recalled details about Mom's science fair project from when we were kids." Jack's eyes widened. Wow. "Ethan, do you think—" "I don't know," Ethan replied, understanding his brother's unspoken question. "We can't get ahead of ourselves. But this is more than we ever dreamed possible." As the brothers talked, Ethan felt a wave of emotions wash over him. Hope, gratitude, and a profound sense of coming full circle. What had started as a personal quest to help his grandmother had grown into something that could potentially change millions of lives. Later that evening, as Ethan tucked Lily into bed, she looked up at him with wide, curious eyes. "Daddy, is great-grandma going to get all better now?" Ethan sat on the edge of her bed, choosing his words carefully. "Well, sweetheart, the medicine is helping her a lot. She's remembering more and feeling better, but Alzheimer's is a very tricky disease. We're still learning how to fight it." Lily nodded solemnly. "But you'll keep trying, right? You'll help lots of great-grandmas and great-grandpas?" "That's right, Lil," Ethan said, feeling a surge of pride and determination. "We'll keep trying. For great-grandma and for everyone else facing this disease." As Lily drifted off to sleep, Ethan made his way to his home office. He had a report to finish for the FDA, detailing the latest results from their expanded trials. As he worked, he found his mind drifting back over the journey that had brought him to this point. He thought of the long nights in the lab, the setbacks and breakthroughs, the constant balance between hope and caution. He thought of his grandmother's strength, her unwavering support, even as the disease tried to rob her of herself. He thought of Lily's innocent questions and Jack's steadfast presence. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Jack, a bottle of their father's favorite whiskey in hand. "Thought we could use a little celebration," Jack said, holding up the bottle. "It's been quite a day." As the brothers settled on the back porch, glasses in hand, a comfortable silence fell between them. The night was clear, stars twinkling overhead in a way that reminded Ethan of nights spent stargazing with their mother, long ago. "You know," Jack said finally, "I've been thinking about Mom a lot lately, about how proud she'd be of all this." Ethan nodded, feeling a familiar pang of grief mixed with warmth. "Yeah, I think about that too. I wish she could see it all." "Oh, I think she can," Jack replied, a small smile playing on his lips. "Maybe not in the way we'd like, but I think she's been with us every step of the way." As they talked, reminiscing about their mother, sharing stories about their grandmother's progress, and speculating about the future of their research, Ethan felt a profound sense of peace settle over him. They had come so far, faced so many challenges, and yet here they were, still fighting, still hoping, still loving. The road ahead was still long, with many hurdles yet to overcome. The treatment wasn't a cure, not yet, but it was a beginning, a ray of hope in what had once seemed an impenetrable darkness. As the first light of dawn began to paint the sky, Ethan made his way back to his office. He had one last addition to make to his report. At the end, after all the data and analysis, he added a personal note. This research is more than just a scientific endeavor. It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, to the power of love and family in the face of devastating illness. Every breakthrough, every small victory, is a step towards a future where families no longer have to face the long goodbye of Alzheimer's alone. We're not just fighting for memories, we're fighting for moments, for connections, for the very essence of what makes us human. And in that fight, we've already won something precious: hope. As Ethan sent off the report, he felt a sense of completion, of coming full circle. What had started as a personal quest had grown into something far bigger than himself, but at its heart, it remained what it had always been: a labor of love, a fight for family, a journey of hope. The sun was fully up now, a new day dawning. And with it came new challenges, new possibilities, new moments to cherish. Ethan stood, stretching tired muscles, and made his way to the kitchen. It was time to make breakfast, to wake Lily for school, to call and check on his grandmother. It was time once again to embrace the beautiful, messy, precious reality of life and family. Because in the end, that's what all of this was about. Not just extending life, but making every moment count. And in that, Ethan knew they had already succeeded beyond their wildest dreams.